Chapter 572. Luchan's studio moved once after its establishment. It moved from the original office building to the new era art park and subleased part of the building of Yu Jizhong's studio, which had an area of about 1,000 square meters. For a new company, an area of 1,000 square meters was definitely too large. Even if it could accommodate hundreds of employees, there would be no problem. At present, the total number of employees of the two studios added up was less than 100. However, Chunfei Media was not an ordinary company. First of all, Luchan's studio had a recording studio, which had been invested several million yuan. A large part of the upper floor had already been separated. Together with the office area, leisure area and department offices, there was not much spare space to use. The new company would develop music, film and television in an all-round way. In addition to the existing recording studio, it would build an independent studio and separate several major departments. With the expansion of the company, the staff would also be further increased. In this way, the area of 1,000 square meters was really not enough. From the perspective of taking precautions, it was even more cramped. The reason was that Luchan's career was developing too fast. Of course, rice had to be eaten one bite at a time. Although the problem existed, it was not impossible to solve. The merger of the two studios first began, and it entered the fast lane in a short period of time. Brother Luchan. There were always surprises in life, such as this beautiful girl who appeared in front of him in Luchan's studio. Sister Jejintana. Luchan was very surprised. He did not expect that Jejintana would come with the staff of Chunfei's studio today. Jejintana was Mongolian and had just turned 15 this year. Last year, when Chunfei was filming on the Mongolian prairie, Luchan went to visit him and met this little girl. They also formed a special relationship. At that time, Luchan wrote a song Beautiful Prairie My Home and taught it to Jejintana. As a result, it was filmed by Chunfei and posted on his blog, causing a great response. Chunfei and Luchan's fans all liked this Mongolian girl very much. With the popularity of the song My Home on the beautiful grassland in China, she became an internet celebrity. After becoming famous, Jejintana attracted a lot of media to interview her. There were even some who wanted to sign a contract with her or become her manager. Whether they had good intentions or good intentions, they all brought her a lot of trouble. Under such circumstances, Chunfei took the initiative to sign Jejintana. She did not want to make much money through Jejintana, but to make up for her unintentional actions. After that, Jejintana came to the capital and settled down under the care of Chunfei. She went to school and started a completely different life. This was the first time Luchan and Jejintana had seen each other since they parted ways on the plains. After half a year, the little girl had grown up a lot. She was a slender and elegant young girl. Even her dressing had changed. There was a trace of unique grassland charm in her youthful beauty. Chunfei regarded Jejintana as his sister. Although she had signed a contract, he did not let her enter the circle too early. He let her spend most of her time studying, so there was not much change in her temperament. Lushi was also there, so Luchan introduced her to his sister. Lushi also liked this beautiful Mongolian girl very much. She held her hand and asked all sorts of questions, as if they were sisters. When Jejintana was signed by Chunfei's studio, Lushi, who got the news, called Luchan to complain, saying that he let go of a good seedling. Now that the two studios had merged, and Jejintana had come along, the result was undoubtedly satisfactory. Jejintana's mouth was very sweet. With a few words, she coaxed Lushi to smile. She took her hand and asked Luchan, "You signed Sister Jejintana. You can't keep her hidden, right? You should also release an album for her." Jejintana hid behind Lushi and smiled. It was obvious that she was looking forward to it. Luchan said with a smile, "Then I'll discuss it with Fair and find a suitable opportunity." Lushi was just about to speak when Chun Xian knocked on the door and walked in. "Manager, Teacher Yu Jizhong is here and wants to see you." "Yu Jizhong?" Luchan and Lushi suddenly looked at each other, not knowing why this neighbor had taken the initiative to visit. When Luchan's studio rented most of the site from Yu Jizhong's studio, the artist was actually not very happy. Although it was close at hand, he had never visited them. Now that he was here, Lushi definitely had to come out to receive him. Luchan also wanted to see him. Lushi said to Jejintana, Sister Jejentana, you play here first. I'll let Chen Xian accompany you. I have something to do with Lu Chan. Jejentana nodded obediently and secretly glanced at Lu Chan. When coming out of the office, Lu Shi lowered her voice and said to Lu Chan, "Be careful." Lu Chan was shocked. "What's wrong?" Lu Shi sneered. "Don't think that I can't tell. Is Jejentana interested in you? She's a teenage girl and doesn't know anything. You have to be careful and don't cause any trouble." Lu Chan smiled bitterly. "Sister." It was certain that Jejentana had a good impression of him, but this kind of good impression should be the hazy feelings of a young girl who just had her first awakening of love. Lu Chan only treated her as a sister, just like Mu Xiaoqiu. His heart had already been filled by one person. Lu Shi interrupted. "Well, you don't have to explain to me. Anyway, you know what you're doing." Lu Chan nodded helplessly. In the customer reception room, he and Lu Shi met Yu Jizhong. The artist still had a slovenly appearance, and his messy beard was his most distinctive personal symbol. Lu Chan didn't dare to slight him. "Hello, teacher Yu. Long time no see." Lu Shi also greeted him politely. Yu Jizhong's character is still good. At least he doesn't have the strange temper of an artist. He smiled and said a few polite words to Lu Chan, and then asked straightforwardly, "Have you heard that your studio is going to expand into a company?" Lu Chan and Lu Shi looked at each other, and the latter replied tentatively, "Yes, teacher Yu." "Then I'll be straight to the point." Yu Jizhong waved his hand and said, "I'm going to move the studio to the art village in Tongzhou in the near future. Do you want to rent the house here? If you do, then I'll sublease it all to you." This was simply a pillow sent to them when they wanted to doze off. Lu Chan and Lu Shi had never thought of renting the half of Yu Jizhong's studio, but the other party took the initiative to come to them. In this way, the first problem after the merger of the two studios was solved. Chapter 573. The New Era Art Center was established in 2001, located between Haidian Park and Beijing University, covering an area of nearly 700 mu. It is one of the key construction projects of Beijing's art and culture. As a well-known and internationally renowned artist, Yu Jizhong was one of the first people to move his studio to the New Era Park. So at that time, he occupied a whole building with an area of 1,800 square meters. At the beginning of last year, Lu Chan, through his relationship with Lin Jijia, the music director of Flying Stone Records, rented 1,000 square meters of area from the artist as the new site of the studio, and invested a huge amount of money to build a first-class recording studio in China. Now Yu Jizhong sublet the remaining 800 square meters of area to Lu Chan, which just solved the problem faced by Lu Chen's new company expansion. Although it was not a timely help, it was better than icing on the cake. Moreover, the price he offered was very fair. He didn't think of taking the opportunity to extort Lu Chan, and even promised to help Lu Chan sign a new long-term contract with the management committee of the art center. All the buildings in the art park belong to the state, and are not allowed to be sold or transferred. Only by signing a long-term contract can the interests of the operator be guaranteed. Therefore, it is not easy to re-sign the contract if there is no relationship like Lu Chen's studio, which accepts the sublease midway. Out of gratitude to Yu Jizhong, Lu Chan and Lu Shi invited the artist to have lunch together at noon. Yu Jizhong readily agreed. During the meal, Yu Jizhong drank a few glasses of wine and was slightly drunk. Suddenly, he said to Lu Chan, "Xiao Lu, don't you think it's a coincidence that you are going to set up a new company here, and I come to give you the site?" Lu Chan and Lu Shi couldn't help looking at each other. Lu Shi tentatively replied, "Yes, teacher Yu, we also feel very strange. It's really a coincidence, and thank you very much." Yu Jizhong pointed to the plate with his chopsticks and said with a smile, "That's because someone spoke for you. He also helped me get a house in the art village. Otherwise, I might not have moved away in the next year or two." "Someone spoke?" Lu Chen asked in surprise. "Teacher Yu, can you tell me who this helper is?" Yu Jizhong smiled and shook his head. "He didn't let me say anyway, you just know," and, after a pause, he continued, "In addition, I also appreciate you very much. There are too few young people like you in the entertainment industry. You are talented but not arrogant. You use it to pursue your career and life progress, and you have a heart for charity." Lu Chan was ashamed and modest. "Teacher Yu, you praise me too much." Yu Jizhong shook his head and said, "It's not a compliment. I know a little about the entertainment industry. There are 2 students in the entertainment industry, but they are not as good as you. The charity fund that you set up to treat leukemia patients is very good. I've heard people talk about it several times. The Chun Fei Charity Foundation, jointly established by Lu Chan and Chun Fei, has been in operation for nearly a year. So far, it has helped more than 300 leukemia patients from poor families, most of whom were children. Some of the patients have basically recovered after bone marrow transplantation, which has won a good reputation for the foundation. Most importantly, unlike most private charity funds, although Chun Fei Charity Foundation has a license to solicit donations from the general public, it never persuades donations under any pretext. In addition to the donations from Lu Chan, Chun Fei, and their friends in the circle, at most they raise money for specific objects through the online crowdfunding, and achieve the purpose of earmarking funds and transparency of accounts. In addition, the daily operating expenses of the foundation are all from the fund account set up by the 2, so that donations from others can be 100% implemented, which is much better than those public-private charity funds with messy accounts. All of these made the fans of Lu Chan and Chun Fei full of pride when talking about it. As a well-known public figure, social reputation is very important. Yu Jizhong, of course, gave up his studio completely because someone spoke, but also because of his good impression and appreciation for Lu Chan. This meal was enjoyed by both the guests and the host. After returning, Yu Jizhong signed a sublease contract with Lu Xi and promised to move out within 3 days. At this point, this unique building with a large area of glass and steel frame, with an indoor area of 1,800 square meters, was no longer divided into 2, and became the headquarters of the soon-to-be-established Chun Fei Media Company, Limited. I'm going to build an indoor studio here. After getting the architectural drawings copied from the management committee, Lu Chan gathered all the important members, including Chun Fei Air Studio, and held a preparatory meeting for the new company. The focus of the meeting was his vision for the future of the new company. Lu Chan pointed to the drawings displayed on the projection screen and said in high spirits, "Build it according to international first-class standards, and set up a special effects production team." International first-class plus special effects production team. Many people present were shocked by Lu Chan's proposal. Although the area of the indoor studio designated by Lu Chan was only about 400 square meters, but according to the international first-class standards, the investment cost was definitely in the tens of millions. High-end equipment basically had to be imported, the price was very expensive, and it was normal to spend hundreds of millions. The special effects production team was even more expensive. Most film and television production companies outsource special effects to specialized companies instead of raising their own team. But Lu Chan had his own ideas. He had this idea as early as when he was filming a Chinese ghost story. At that time, the special effects company found for a Chinese ghost story was not the top in Hong Kong. It was not that they were reluctant to spend money, but that the top companies were already full of business. Fortunately, there were not many special effects in this movie. Even so, it still involved a lot of energy for Lu Chan, and he spent a lot of money, but the final effect was not particularly satisfactory. This feeling of being controlled made Lu Chan very uncomfortable. Unlike other film and television companies, Lu Chan had a powerful and unparalleled trump card, which was the treasure house of memories from the dream world, which was a source of endless wealth. With this trump card in hand, he was not afraid that the TV movies he invested in would lose money. He could completely afford the huge expenses of building his own studio and special effects production team. Lu Chan's ambition was not only to let this team serve him, but also to promote the overall standard of domestic special effects production, so that the audience would not criticize the domestic blockbusters as 50 cents. His ambition was a little big, but in the future, when his peers saw the films and TV series produced by Chun Fei Media with excellent production, how could they be indifferent? Although the new company had not been officially established, Lu Chan had already set his eyes on the future. Chapter 574. Lu Chan's confidence and ambition first brought a lot of impact to the senior management of Chun Fei Studio. Several managers and supervisors disapproved of this. They had no objection to the merger of the 2 studios to form a new company, but in the process of the merger, Chun Fei Studio, which was more powerful, would be merged into Lu Chan Studio, so they had some ideas in their hearts. It's just that they have ideas. Since Chun Fei has made a decision, everyone can only obey. But this did not mean that they were convinced by the young Lu Chan. Now Lu Chan had thrown out such a big company construction plan, which was an amazing investment of tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of international first-class special effects production team. A supervisor couldn't help but say, "Mr. Lu, the company has just been set up and operated. Should we be cautious, stabilize the foundation first and then slowly do it step by step?" In the supervisor's view, Lu Chan was a little too arrogant and confident. Young entrepreneurs usually make such mistakes. Although Lu Chan's past achievements are dazzling, whether in the entertainment industry or in the business circle, there are many examples of smooth sailing and complacency, leading to decision-making mistakes later. Learn from the mistakes of the past. You can't become fat in one go. You just learn to walk and you want to run. How could it be so easy? Indoor studios were not so bad. There were big ways to do it, small ways to do it, and the cost and investment were controllable. However, the talents and high-end equipment needed by a special effects production team were simply bottomless pits. If they aimed for the international first-class level, it would be a cosmic black hole that devoured funds. Why was the investment of Hollywood blockbusters so amazing? In addition to the remuneration of star actors, the main thing was the cost of special effects production. The special effects production cost of some blockbusters even accounted for more than 70% of the total budget. It was too difficult to catch up in China. Although many domestic blockbusters claimed to have special effects produced by Hollywood teams, and a lot of money was indeed invested compared with real Hollywood blockbusters, there was a big gap. Some films lost money because they spent too much money on special effects and couldn't achieve the effect that the audience was satisfied with. This was the result of outsourcing special effects production. In contrast, youth and idol films that did not need special effects made a lot of money in the market. Therefore, he disapproved of Lu Chan's idea. However, Lu Chan was very determined. Although an excellent special effects team was hard to come by, as long as he was willing to spend money and sincerity to recruit talents, and was willing to invest in equipment and technology, as long as he persevered, the initial expenditure would be great but the returns would be tempting. At this time, Chun Feier said, "I support Lu Chan's decision." She expressed her firm support for Lu Chan, so the others naturally had nothing to say. When Lu Chan saw that the managers and directors were not convinced, he smiled and said, "I'm here to announce a piece of good news. The box office of a Chinese ghost story, produced by our studio, has exceeded 90 million yuan in Xiangjiang. It won't be a problem to exceed 100 million yuan before it's released." A Chinese ghost story was officially released in Hong Kong on the 21st of last month to today, March 8th. In less than 3 weeks, the total box office had reached 91.08 million. There were still more than 10 days before it's released, so breaking 100 million yuan was 100% achievable. The people attending the meeting were the management personnel of the two studios. Most of them had been in the industry before. They knew very well what it meant for Hong Kong's box office to exceed 100 million yuan. That was the level of a Hollywood blockbuster. Lu Chan was undoubtedly using this news to show or prove his strength, and that was not all. In addition, the sales of the peripheral products of a Chinese ghost story have also exceeded 40 million yuan. And I can tell you that the total cost of a Chinese ghost story, from production to publicity, did not exceed 37 million yuan. There was nothing more intuitive than data. If Lu Chan only said that a Chinese ghost story had made a lot of money at the box office, no one would feel much. There were many films that made money. It was completely different to compare it with detailed and accurate data. The producers of Hong Kong's box office share was more than that of the mainland, usually between 50% to 60%. Even if a Chinese ghost story had a 50% share, the total box office of 100 million yuan would be 50 million yuan. The profit of the peripheral products was even higher. Even if it was calculated at 50%, 40 million yuan would be 20 million yuan. The two added up to 70 million yuan. The cost was 37 million yuan, and the profit was 33 million yuan. It did not sound like a lot. These days, a movie that sold well at the box office would be embarrassed to go out and greet people if it did not earn hundreds of millions. However, this was only the profit realized by a Chinese ghost story in Hong Kong. This movie was about to be released in the mainland, and every share of the box office would be a net profit. Even if the share in the domestic market was relatively low, it would still be a shocking number unless it failed. Would a Chinese ghost story fail in the mainland? This possibility was really very small. If the quality of the film was not good, how could it conquer the picky Hong Kong audience? In addition, with the platform of Hong Kong, a Chinese ghost story could easily be exported to Treasure Island, Australia, and many countries in Southeast Asia. It was even possible to land in Japan and South Korea. Liu Chan and Chan Fei were very famous in South Korea. Because of all these, everyone suddenly realized that spending hundreds of millions to build a world-class studio and special effects production team was not a big problem for the new company that was about to be established. Of course, they could be willful with money. As for the benefits of having a high-end studio and special effects team, there was no need to say more. The managers and supervisors of Chan Fei-er's studio were not fools. They understood after thinking for a while. Their attitude toward Liu Chan suddenly changed greatly. There was less contempt and disapproval, and more admiration and respect. This industry had always been based on strength. Profit was the best way to prove one's strength. Liu Chan had enough strength to realize his ambition. After convincing everyone, Liu Chan took advantage of the victory. Let's put the company's planning and construction aside for now. The first important thing after the establishment of the new company is the promotion of a Chinese ghost story. My expectations for the domestic box office of a Chinese ghost story: no less than 500 million. If it was any other young man who wanted to make a domestic box office of 500 million for his first movie, everyone would definitely scoff at him and laugh at his arrogance. But facing Liu Chan, no one had any doubts now. They even felt that this expected goal was not high at all. If it was calculated according to the 500 million domestic box office, then the profit that a Chinese ghost story would bring to Chen Fei Media would be 200 million, not including the sales of peripheral products. Chapter 575. On March 13th, Chen Fei Media completed its registration in Beijing, and the two studios officially merged into a new company. The registered capital of Beijing Chen Fei Media Company Limited is 10 million yuan. The legal representative is Liu Chan, Chan Fei is the chairman, and Wuxia is the general manager. The three hold 45%, 45%, and 10% of the shares respectively. The company is headquartered in Building C17 of the New Era Art Center in Beijing. At the same time, the official V of the two studios in Waves blog was cancelled, and the official V of Chen Fei Media was launched at the same time. On the same day, the number of followers exceeded the 1 million mark. The establishment of Chen Fei Media caused a lot of repercussions in the circle, and even made many big shots in the industry vigilant. Chen Fei's studio was established very early, and Liu Chan's studio was relatively new. The two studios had one thing in common, that was, they basically only served themselves and never signed other artists. The only exception was Jejentana, but Chan Fei signed this Mongolian girl for another reason, which was completely different from ordinary artists. Now that Chen Fei Media was established, the two studios joined forces and upgraded to a real company, and the scope of business covered pop music, TV series, and movies. The business strategy was bound to change dramatically. Looking at Liu Chan's development trajectory in the past 2 years, people couldn't help but feel shocked. Liu Chan first changed domestic pop music, stirring up the music industry with amazing talent and exuberant creative ability, making 2016 his pop year. While sweeping the pop music world, Liu Chan crossed over into the film and television industry. A self-written and self-acted Autumn in My Heart and a Full House of Romance both created a ratings miracle and won the ratings champion in South Korea. The results were as dazzling as the sun, and no one could ignore them. However, after great success in the TV series, Liu Chan was still not satisfied. He went to Hong Kong to set up a new studio and filmed his first movie, A Chinese Ghost Story. This movie, based on strange tales from a Chinese studio, only invested 30 million yuan, but it beat the blockbuster Painted Skin, which invested more than 100 million yuan in the box office war. At present, the cumulative box office has exceeded 100 million yuan, and even the peripherals have been sold for tens of millions. What made people speechless was that Liu Chan took care of the director, male lead, screenwriter, and soundtrack of A Chinese Ghost Story. The movie would soon be released in China. With all these, he teamed up with Chen Fei. How could it not make people in the industry feel like wolves are coming? Of course, many people wanted to cooperate with Chen Fei Media, especially those who had worked with the two studios in the past. They sent their congratulations and blessings on their blogs, especially those who had worked with the two studios before. Chunfei Media, Fei and Media. The 100 Minutes of Chinese Fei Chunfei Media. And Media. The domestic film censorship system was unique in the world, and the scope of control was also very large. Many domestic films were shot down during the script review stage, and even slightly sensitive content was not allowed. That was not the worst part. If the script was rejected, they would just have to go back and rewrite it, which would only waste some printing fees and brain cells. At most it would take a little more time. The worst part was that after the movie was painstakingly shot and submitted for review, they would only receive the word failed in the end. Chun is Chun Wei Fei. You are Chun. Fei Chun. It is like you is standing. Qian. In the end, you can only wait for a cold answer and some vague comments. If you don't know the people behind the door, you can't even get a real opinion on the changes. This was the despair of a filmmaker who posted on his personal blog after his film was rejected. Also, it was not easy to pass the review. In the end, a large part of the plot and scenes in the film were cut. As a result, the audience was often confused when watching the film. They were clearly fighting in the room, but they suddenly came out and sat in the car. Those who did not know the truth often scolded the director for making no sense in editing. However, the director was really wronged. Because the bloody and violent scenes were cut, it was not only domestic films. Even imported Hollywood blockbusters could not escape this big scissors. As a result, many audiences went home to search for the original version on the internet after watching the film in the cinema. The waters here were too deep. If one were to really talk about it, it wouldn't be a problem to compile a thick ancient book. Later, there were too many opinions. Even the Americans tried to pressure them through various channels. Since 2010, the film censorship system of the State Administration of Radio, Film and Television had been reformed. In general, the speed of the review had been accelerated and the intensity of editing had been reduced. Even so, A Chinese Ghost Story still had 2 so-called erotic scenes cut. In fact, this was already within Lu Chen's expectations. It would be strange if the censors of the State Administration of Radio, Film and Television did not cut it. These 9 minutes of content had basically no impact on the plot. It was already very satisfactory to get such a result. The large-scale publicity of A Chinese Ghost Story could finally be fully carried out in the country. Lu Chen had set a budget of up to 30 million yuan for the domestic publicity of this movie. Although it was a glorious achievement to have a box office of more than 100 million yuan in Xinjiang, a film with a box office of more than 100 million yuan in the country was nothing at all. Especially after 2010, the box office records were constantly being broken. 300 million, 500 million, 1 billion, 5 billion, 2 billion. Breaking the record was as easy as cutting melons and vegetables. Although many films that broke the record had the phenomenon of the box office being flooded, there was no doubt that the popularity of the domestic film market was undeniable. The box office champion of the past was nothing today. The explosion of the market brought about amazing benefits, and amazing benefits brought about fierce competition. At this time, the role of publicity and marketing was big. It was indispensable. If a new film did not promote or hype and relied solely on word of mouth to win the audience, there were examples, but it was definitely a rare existence. There was a lot of chance and luck involved. Cinema chains wouldn't even give a lot of screenings for obscure movies. Precious resources shouldn't be wasted on nameless people. This was the reality, the rule of the industry. The publicity budget that Lu Chen had set for A Chinese Ghost Story was actually not considered high. This was because before A Chinese Ghost Story, the domestic publicity for The Painted Skin had already been carried out vigorously. Huaguan Pictures was obviously unwilling to fail in Xinjiang and had bet on the domestic market. And the opponent that A Chinese Ghost Story faced was not only The Painted Skin. Chapter 576. On March 20th, Battle of Vulcan will be released, and on April 9th, Legend of the Holy Land will be released. In the conference room of Chunfei Media, a closed-door meeting of the company's executives was being held. Wan Xiaoguan spoke into the microphone with a serious expression. These 2 Hollywood special effects blockbusters are our biggest opponents. Unless we delay A Chinese Ghost Story to be released in May, we can't avoid them. Wan Xiaoquan returned to the capital from Hong Kong 3 days ago. The day before he returned, A Chinese Ghost Story, which had exhausted its box office potential, ended perfectly in the major cinemas in Hong Kong. The cumulative box office earnings were 105 million yuan, ranking in the top 20 in Hong Kong's history. If Hollywood blockbusters were excluded, A Chinese Ghost Story was ranked 7th among the Hong Kong and Sino-Hong Kong co-productions, and this did not include the 42 million plus peripheral sales. As the actual director of the movie, Wan Xiaoquan's contribution could not be ignored. In addition to the generous rewards, he also received half a month of long-term leave. However, Wan Xiaoquan did not choose to go on a vacation. Instead, he immediately returned to China to help Lu Chan with the publicity for A Chinese Ghost Story in China. He had quite a lot of experience in this regard. Others might not understand, but Wan Xiaoquan's name was not on A Chinese Ghost Story. Not only was he not disappointed or resentful, but he also racked his brains to come up with ideas for Chenfei Media. It was a little unbelievable. However, Wan Xiaoquan's gratitude to Lu Chan had always been buried in his heart. He was not very good at expressing his feelings, so he used his actions to repay Lu Chan's kindness. Lu Chan had helped Wan Xiaoquan when he was at his lowest and gave him precious trust. He allowed him to make a comeback in Hong Kong, and gave him a work that was destined to become a classic. It really did not matter if it had a name or not. What mattered was that if his name was in the subtitles of the movie, it would not pass the review of the SARFT. Moreover, Wan Xiaoquan sincerely admired Lu Chan. The script of A Chinese Ghost Story was written by Lu Chan, and many of the scenes were drawn by Lu Chan. Coupled with the excellent soundtrack, it would not be a problem for another director. With all these reasons, Wan Xiaoquan needed to prove his ability even more. How could he have the leisure to go on a vacation? Recently, A Chinese Ghost Story had been released in China, but the situation was not optimistic. Showdown on Vulcan was a sci-fi blockbuster that Superstar Pictures had invested $170 million in. It had already earned $270 million in the box office in America, and it was aggressively moving to China. The publicity was even more fanfare. The CEO of Superstar Pictures, Douglas, was extremely confident that he would be able to obtain over 1 billion yuan in the domestic box office. In comparison, Lion Pictures' fantasy blockbuster Legend of the Holy Land had a weaker reputation, but the investment for this movie was not much worse than Battle of Vulcan. It had reached $150 million and was about to be released in the United States. If A Chinese Ghost Story were to be released at this time, it would have to face the attacks of 2 Hollywood blockbusters. It would undoubtedly be quite difficult to achieve Lu Chen's goal of 500 million box office. However, it would be even worse if it was delayed until May. At present, there were already pirated versions of A Chinese Ghost Story on the internet. However, they were all CAM and TS versions, which were the so-called gun versions and quasi-gun versions. The quality was very poor and was not enough to threaten the box office. Now, the country still attached great importance to the copyright protection of domestically produced films, including Hong Kong films. If a high-definition version was released during the screening period, it would definitely be severely attacked. After it was taken off the schedule, the impact would be much smaller. As the impact of the CAM and TS versions was very small, the producers turned a blind eye to it. It was fine if A Chinese Ghost Story was released recently, but if it was delayed for too long, it would be very difficult to control the high-definition version. At that time, the impact on the box office would be even greater. A Chinese Ghost Story will not be delayed, Lu Chan said decisively. Even if it's May, there will still be Hollywood blockbusters competing. We can't avoid it. We might as well fight with them. It doesn't matter even if we lose. What's more, we might not lose. The cost of A Chinese Ghost Story had long been recovered, and the extra profits were more than enough to be used for domestic publicity. No matter how much they earned in the box office, it was still a profit. If they were still afraid of competition, then they might as well not make a movie. Many domestic filmmakers had a phobia of beauty. The box office failure of a film was often blamed on the Hollywood blockbusters competing at the same time. They lamented that they were inferior in terms of technical strength and complained about the country's openness to the film market. As a result, the protection month for domestic films, in July and August became a hot commodity. All the film companies were sharpening their heads to drill into it, fighting for a slot. In recent years, domestic films had relied on youth films, idol films, and big IP films to recover some of their decline. The situation had finally improved a lot. A Chinese Ghost Story was not related to these three genres, but Lu Chan was not afraid of Hollywood blockbusters. This was because he had never thought of making a profit in the domestic film market. His goal was long-term, building a high-standard indoor studio, and setting up a special effects production team were all around this goal. Lu Chen's confidence and courage to face the challenge infected everyone present. Wan Xiaoquan smiled and said, "Then we have to increase our publicity efforts and formulate a targeted publicity strategy. Boss, you and the lady boss should show off your love on the blog more. The effect will definitely be good and it will save money." Everyone could not help but laugh. They did not expect Wan Xiaoquan, who had always been serious, to also joke. Lu Chen smiled bitterly. "I will try my best." Although Wan Xiaoquan was joking, what he said was very reasonable. As far as the movie A Chinese Ghost Story was concerned, the tens of millions of fans of Lu Chan and Chen Fei were undoubtedly the biggest ticket bank. The two of them increased their interaction on the blog and revealed some small information. It was all side publicity for A Chinese Ghost Story. The meeting ended after 2 hours. It was worth mentioning that The Painted Skin, which had already been released, was not included in the discussion. Because no one regarded The Painted Skin, a loser, as an opponent, there was naturally no value in discussing it. The head of Huaguan Pictures, Cui Xingxian, would probably vomit 3 mouthfuls of blood if he knew about it. After the meeting, Lu Chan had just returned to his office when Lu Shi's assistant, Chan Xian, came over. His sister had something important to talk to him about. Lu Chan felt a little strange, so he immediately rushed to Lu Shi's general manager's office. "What's wrong?" Lu Shi did not answer directly. Instead, she turned the computer screen on the table 180 degrees for him to see. The web page opened on the screen was the entertainment section of a large domestic website. The bold and black title on it was very eye-catching, causing Lu Chen's eyelids to twitch. The Golden Luan Awards nominations are leaked. The popular drama, Full of Romance, is not on the list. Chapter 577. The Golden Luan Awards was one of the 2 major domestic TV awards. In terms of scale and influence in the past decade, the Golden Luan Awards had surpassed the older Yulan Awards to become the #1 domestic TV awards. Unlike the Yulan Awards, which was heavily influenced by the government, the Golden Luan Awards were the only national TV awards that were approved by the relevant government departments and voted on by the audience. To a large extent, they represented the direction and trends of the TV industry in the past year. As last year's #1 urban TV series, it was inconceivable that Full House of Romance would not be nominated for the Golden Luan Awards. This made Lu Chan, who didn't pay much attention to the Golden Luan Awards, angry and confused. He carefully read through the entertainment news. The content of the news was very long. First, it mentioned that the biennial Golden Luan Awards would be announced at the end of the month, but the name of last year's popular TV series, Full House of Romance, was not on the list. Based on this insider information, the reporters analyzed and guessed that the reason why Full House of Romance had not been nominated for the Golden Luan Awards was the same as why Autumn in My Heart had only received 2 nominations for the Yulan Awards last year. The basic purpose of the 2 major TV awards was that domestic TV series should follow the direction of positive energy. They needed to promote social justice, promote the values of the new era, and increase national confidence and cohesion. They should not judge the quality and value of a work based on the ratings. It wasn't just Autumn and Full House of Romance. Other urban TV series, idol dramas, comedies, and so on which had good ratings did not have much success in the 2 awards. In the end, the reporter expressed his regret that Full House of Romance did not get nominated for the Golden Luan Awards. He hoped that the final results would change so that romantic idol dramas could also get on the stage. The article had only been published for a little over an hour, but there were already over 5,000 comments. "What's the Golden Luan Awards? Never heard of it." This comment received over 1,000 likes and was at the top of the list. "I've been represented again." 789 likes and was at the 2nd place. It's understandable that the Yulan Awards didn't talk about the ratings. After all, it's a government award. If the Golden Luan Awards followed suit, then what's the point of having the audience vote? Why not just decide on the award? Haha, the person above makes it sound like the Golden Luan Awards isn't decided. It doesn't matter if it wins or not. It's enough as long as the ratings are high. What's the point? There are so many jealous people. I think this is the right way. Holy sh*t. Last time it was the Yulan Awards, and this time it's the Golden Luan Awards. Lu Chun is really being suppressed. It's hard to say if it's suppression, but it's true that it's boring. I don't care, I don't pay attention. Among these comments, most of them were dissatisfied with the Golden Luan Awards. There were also some who felt that it was unfair for Full of Romance. There were also a few who were probably Lu Chun's fans who were so indignant that they directly scolded the awards. Lu Chun didn't finish reading the long comments section. After a few minutes he closed the web page. He asked Lu Shi, "What do you think?" Lu Shi shook her head and said, "I haven't heard anything yet, so I can't confirm the authenticity of the news. Actually, even if it's true, it doesn't matter. We don't need this award." When Lu Shi first saw this news, she also felt very angry. It was a clear rule that urban idol dramas didn't have any competition in the two awards. It was normal for them to not be liked by the judges, but it didn't even get a nomination. That was really too much. Full of Romance's ratings in 2016 could be said to be superior to its peers, and it even won first place in the ratings in Korea. The Golden Luan Awards committee ignored the results of this drama. Weren't they afraid of being scolded? But then again, among the domestic pop music, television drama, and movie awards, the Yulan Awards and the Golden Luan Awards had the least influence. In the past, the two awards had a lot of dirty secrets such as predetermined awards, voting fraud, and so on. There had always been a lot of controversy in the industry. It might not be a bad thing for Full of Romance not to get involved in this mess. In addition, whether this news was true or not still needed to be verified, so there was no need to get angry over it. His sister was afraid that Lu Chun would be depressed and angry, so she comforted him a few more words. Lu Chun smiled and said, "If there's nothing, then there's nothing. We have enough things to do, there's no need to." *******. Before he finished speaking, the phone on his desk rang. Lu Shi gestured to Lu Chun and then picked up the phone. "Hello, Chunfei Media." "Well, yes, what's the matter?" I haven't heard of this matter yet. I don't know the situation, so I can't comment." "I'm really sorry, it's not convenient for us to accept interviews for the time being. Thank you, goodbye." After talking for a while, Lu Shi put down the phone and said, "It's a reporter from Entertainment Express. It's about the Golden Luan Awards. He wanted to interview you, but I refused." Lu Chun nodded. At first he was also very angry, but after reading the online report, his mood calmed down. Whether or not Full of Romance could get a nomination for the Golden Luan Awards in the end, it would not affect the status of this TV series in the industry. Not to mention anything else, Shangjang Satellite TV and ATV had offered a very high price for this TV series. They would not care about the Golden Luan Awards or the Yulan Awards. In the end, it was the results that spoke. Whether it was being suppressed or being ignored, maintaining a normal mind could go further in the film and television industry. It was also right not to accept interviews from reporters. Those reporters who wanted to see the world in chaos hoped that the two sides would fight because of this and make up news like Lu Chun bombards the Golden Luan Awards to attract attention. It was too stupid to expect them to report fairly and impartially. Entertainment reporters were best at taking things out of context and even fabricating news, and they were very willing to go to court. It was so disgusting that it could disgust you to death. ******. The phone on the desk rang again. Not only that, but two of Lu Shi's mobile phones rang at the same time. For a time, the general manager's office was constantly ringing, and it became extremely noisy. There was no doubt that those entertainment reporters must have called after getting the news. Lu Shi was probably annoyed. Seeing this, Lu Chun smiled and said, "Go on with your work. I'm going back to work. I haven't finished the script." After saying that, he hurriedly slipped away, leaving his sister in the office overwhelmed and battered. Returning to his office, Lu Chun asked his assistant to bring him a cup of coffee. Although the script of View from the Star had been completed, there were still many contents that needed to be revised and corrected. He quickly put the matter of the Golden Luan Awards behind him. However, things were not that simple. Chapter 578. You from the Star is the third urban drama that Lu Chan is preparing to shoot this year. And it is also the last of his romantic trilogy. After shooting, he will fully turn to his own martial arts IP drama. The male and female protagonists of this TV series are still played by him and Chan Fei, which is a perfect stage achievement. It is precisely because of this that Lu Chan attaches more importance to this TV series than Autumn in My Heart and Full House of Romance. The budget is double that of Full House of Romance, mainly because of the increased investment in special effects. You from the Star has a certain science fiction color. The male protagonist is an alien with superpower and a long life. This special romantic drama is definitely very fresh in terms of genre. Lu Chan dug out You from the Star from the memory of the dream world, and also wanted to create a ratings miracle again. But even with the memory wealth of a world, Lu Chan will never lie down and make money. When he was in Hong Kong, he began to write the script of You from the Star, and made a lot of modifications on the basis of the original work, especially some bug settings and plots that made the audience criticize. Big plentiful story and characters. The same approach he has been successful with Full House of Romance, and You from the Star is certainly no exception, and will do better. Lu Chan is preparing to shoot 30 episodes of this TV series, adding a new storyline, and increasing the number of characters in the play, which is loyal to the original work, and more than the original work. It's just that in this way, Lu Chan's workload of writing the script has increased big, and he likes to master the whole story by himself, so he never hires a team to write for him like other big-name screenwriters. At this point, Lu Chan has no idea about money and fame. What he really pursues is a breakthrough in his career, so that he can maintain a steady stream of forward momentum. Therefore, the script of You from the Star has been written for 2 months, and has not been finalized yet. There are still many details that need to be perfected. However, there is an endless stream of people seeking cooperation, and they are about to break the threshold. Among them, the most active are Zhidong Satellite TV and Beijing Television. The 2 satellite TV stations have tasted the sweetness of Full of Romance, and they have made a lot of money from advertising income. They are determined to win You from the Star. Of the nearly 30 satellite TV stations in the country, more than a dozen had contacted the original Lu Chan studio. The rest were not uninterested, but they knew that their strength was limited, so they did not participate in the competition. Apart from Zhidong Satellite TV and Beijing Television, the most active and richest one is undoubtedly Shanghai Satellite TV. The price offered by Shanghai Satellite TV was higher than that of Zhidong Satellite TV and Beijing Television. So far, Lu Chan has not officially finalized the partner of You from the Star. However, this did not affect the writing of the script. Thud, thud. A soft knock on the door woke Lu Chan up from his creative state. At this time, he realized that the sky outside the floor-to-ceiling window was getting dark. He didn't know when the lights in the room had been turned on. "You're still writing?" It was Lu Shi who knocked on the door. She exclaimed in surprise. "You've been sitting in front of the computer for 4 to 5 hours. So long?" Lu Chan saved the document, stood up and moved his muscles and bones. Sure enough, he found that his hands and feet were a little sore after sitting for too long. Lu Shi smiled and said, "You must be hungry, right? Let's go to dinner. Someone will pay the bill tonight." Ah, Lu Chan was curious. "Who is it?" Lu Shi blinked. "Guess." Lu Chan rubbed his nose and said with a wry smile, "How can I guess? Is Fair back?" After the establishment of Chun Fei Media, as the lady boss, Chun Fei was busier than Lu Chan. A few days ago, she went to Huhai to shoot a commercial, and it was almost time for her to come back. As for the others, Lu Chan really couldn't think of them. It's not that he's bragging, but in the circle of Beijing, there are not thousands of people who want to invite him to dinner. It's not a problem to casually pick a few hundred, and they will not be unknown people. You only think of your wife. Lu Shi rolled her eyes and took the initiative to reveal the mystery. You don't need to guess blindly. The person who is treating is called Wan Jinping. Wan Jinping. Lu Chan couldn't help but frown. This name is a little familiar. Lu Shi reminded. He is the general manager of Hongwen Agency. Lu Chen's memory suddenly recovered, and he knew what kind of person Wan Jinping was. In Beijing's entertainment circle, Wan Jinping was really a character. His reputation in the media was not big, and could even be said to be very small. His name rarely appeared in entertainment gossip news, as if he was an inconspicuous small character. But people who know Wang Jinping well will not regard him as an ordinary person. The first time Lu Chan heard of Wang Jinping was when he was chatting with Sister Li over dinner. At that time, Sister Li mentioned that there was such a person who was slick and smart, had a wide network in the circle, and was very popular. Although Wang Jinping opened a management company, he was actually a high-level broker. He mainly acted as a middleman for investors and producers, and he was doing very well in both sides. For example, if a rich coal boss suddenly wanted to shoot a movie or TV series and wanted to use his mistress, but he did not know anything about the industry, then he found the right person to look for Wang Jinping. As long as he had money, Wang Jinping could quickly pull together a decent production team in Beijing, hire a second or third-rate director to direct, and spend 2 to 3 months to come up with a dozen episodes of TV series or movie, and then use his connections to broadcast it on television stations and cinemas. If necessary, he could also help hire a group of online promoters and media reporters to hype and promote, and a new celebrity in the entertainment circle would gradually rise. Wang Jinping's connections were very wild. Not only did he have private connections, but he also had connections with government agencies. He had connections with all sorts of people, but he was rarely exposed in the public eye. People who were not in the industry rarely knew of his existence. Such a shrewd person suddenly treating Lu Chan to a meal made him vigilant. "Do you know what's going on?" Lu Shi shook her head. "I just don't know, so I went to take a look. He said it was a good thing over the phone." His sister's lips curled into a mocking smile. A night owl would come to the house for no reason. Lu Chan was not afraid of Wang Jinping, but since Lu Shi had agreed, he also wanted to see what the other party was up to. "Then let's go." Lu Chan picked up the coat on the chair, put it on and said with a smile, "It feels like we are going to a Hungmin banquet." His sister laughed. Chapter 579. No circle could be pure and flawless. Just as there was light and there was darkness, there was also a gray area between light and darkness. Wang Jinping was a person who wandered in the gray area. He played big but kept a low profile. He had a high reputation in the circle and had a wide network of contacts accumulated over the years, so he couldn't be taken lightly. Wang Jinping also had a nickname in the circle, Jack of all trades. This nickname was very vivid. It was because of this that Lu Shi agreed to his invitation. Otherwise, she wouldn't need to pay attention to a broker. In this circle, it was okay to offend a gentleman, but offending a villain would cause a lot of trouble. The place where Wang Jinping invited the banquet was at Thousand Sakura Restaurant, which was a top Japanese restaurant in Beijing. The per capita consumption was at least 3,000 or 4,000, and many celebrities frequented it. When Lu Chan and Lu Shi arrived at Thousand Sakura Restaurant, Wang Jinping was already waiting there. Wang Jinping was about 40 years old. He was neither tall nor short and looked ordinary. His eyes and eyebrows were quite narrow. He was wearing a dark gray suit and looked like an old white-collar worker. "Mr. Lu Chan, I'm honored that you accepted my invitation." In the private room, Wang Jinping took the initiative to extend his hands to Lu Chan and said with a smile, "I'm Wang Jinping." Lu Chan shook hands with him and said with a smile, "Hello, Wan." Wang Jinping exchanged a few more polite words with Lu Shi, even more respectful than Lu Chan. In terms of attitude, this entertainment industry broker was impeccable. He was not overly flattering, but gave people a warm feeling like a spring breeze, as if they were old friends who had not seen each other for a long time. The atmosphere was very comfortable. After sitting down, Wang Jinping first invited Lu Chan and Lu Shi to order, and then ordered a few more dishes. "Mr. Lu Chan, how about some sake?" Lu Chan smiled and said, "CEO Wan, you can have some if you like, but I'm afraid I can only drink 1 or 2 glasses." Wang Jinping understood. Drinking alcohol hurts the throat, but the alcohol content of sake isn't high, so we'll just drink a little. Singers did not drink or drank less mainly to protect their voices, especially if they drank alcohol before singing. Their vocal cords would swell with blood. Singing at this time was especially harmful and might even cause permanent damage. However, it was fine to occasionally drink beer, yellow wine, red wine, and other low-alcohol drinks. Wang Jinping was an insider, so he naturally understood the logic behind it. He ordered a bottle of Kikazuna Masamune, which did not have a high alcohol content. Thousand Sakura cuisine was very famous, and the price was also very expensive. As for whether it was worth the money, it was a matter of opinion. However, if one wanted to eat their fill here, it would not be an easy task. Luchan tasted a few sushi and felt that it was pretty good. While enjoying the Japanese food, Wang Jinping was also secretly observing Luchan. The first time he heard of Lu Chen's name was more than a year ago. At that time, Luchan had made a name for himself in the pop music world and showed outstanding creative talent. At that time, Wang Jinping had the idea of signing Luchan to his company. The main business of Wang Jinping's agency was to connect investors, but he also paid attention to discovering potential newcomers. After cultivating, packaging, and hyping them up, he would transfer them to others and earn quick money. Unfortunately, at that time, Luchan did not consider signing with any agency at all and directly opened his own studio. Wang Jinping, who had missed the opportunity, did not care. There were too many newcomers emerging in the circle every year, and there were many good-looking and talented people everywhere. There was no need to regret missing one. However, the speed of Lu Chen's rise in the circle was simply astonishing. His works not only swept the music world, but also crossed over to the film and television industry. The first TV series he wrote and acted in created a miracle in the ratings. Now, although Luchan could not be compared to the top big shots in terms of experience and foundation, there were really not many people who could compare to him in the limelight in the past 2 years. In the process, Wang Jinping had been an outsider until this time, when someone came to ask him to connect them. Young people nowadays are really amazing, Wang Jinping thought to himself as he quietly downed a cup of sake. After 3 rounds of drinking and eating until he was half full, Wang Jinping consulted Luchan and Lushi, then asked the waiter to remove the plates and replace them with oolong tea. It was time to get down to business. After being in the circle for so long, Wang Jinping's eloquence was undoubtedly strong, but he did not know why, in the face of the siblings in front of him, he was not very confident that he could persuade them. So after thinking for a moment, Wang Jinping decisively abandoned his original line of thought and asked tentatively, "Mr. Luchan, about the rumors about the Golden Luan Award nomination, do you know about it?" Luchan and Lushi looked at each other, and Luchan nodded and said, "Yes, President Wan. Do you have any inside information?" As he said that, he could not help but laugh. Wang Jinping's heart sank because Luchan's reaction was completely beyond his expectations. In his opinion, an artist like Luchan who became famous at a young age was most likely a proud and arrogant person. Encountering such an obvious suppression, he would definitely be angry in his heart, or at least not comfortable. When he mentioned this matter now, Luchan could be angry, dissatisfied, indifferent, or deliberately not show his emotions. But this relaxed attitude made Wang Jinping feel that his confidence had taken another blow. Wang Jinping's eyes were very sharp. He could see that Luchan really did not care and was not pretending to be generous. When did the Golden Luan Award become so unattractive? In the circle, who knew how many actors and artists were racking their brains to get a nomination to raise their status? There were many who looked to Wang Jinping for public relations. The top bigwigs might not care, but Luchan Wang Jinping's mind raced and he said with a smile, "There's not much inside information, but as far as I know, the news on the internet may not be true. The official nomination hasn't come out yet, so everything can change." He was actually very obviously hinting at Luchan, but Luchan did not seem to understand, nor did he ask curiously. Wang Jinping cursed inwardly, and could only continue speaking. "In my opinion, Full House of Romance is a very outstanding TV series, and it should do well at the Golden Luan Awards." After saying that, Wang Jinping stared closely at Luchan, trying to see something from the latter's eyes. However, Luchan's eyes were deep and indifferent, like an unseen pool of still water. There was not the slightest emotional fluctuation in his heart, as if Wang Jinping was talking about someone else's matter, and it had nothing to do with him. For the first time in his life, Wang Jinping, who was experienced, felt a sense of helplessness. Chapter 580. Wang Jinping had once seen Luchan's eyes in a real veteran actor. They were as deep as a black hole. They had seen through the vicissitudes of the world, seen through the world and returned to simplicity. How could they appear in a young man's eyes? Under such a gaze, Wang Jinping felt that all his probing calculations and conspiracies were not presentable at all. If he said it, He would only be humiliating himself. There was nothing else he could do but lose face. For a moment, the shrewd broker of the entertainment industry was at a loss for words. Lu Chun suddenly smiled and said, "Thank you for your compliment, President Wan. You can say what you want to say." Wan Jinping suddenly breathed a sigh of relief, as if he had been relieved of a heavy burden. But the next moment, his old face couldn't help but turn red. Lu Chun had taken the initiative in the conversation. Ahem. Fortunately, Wan Jinping was thick-skinned enough. He quickly coughed twice to cover up his embarrassment and said, "Here's the thing. There is a very powerful and top domestic unit who wants to cooperate with you to shoot you from the star. Of course, the conditions are very good." You from the star? Lu Chun didn't feel strange. Recently, there were too many people eyeing his TV series. Several major satellite TV stations were competing very fiercely, and the conditions they offered were higher than the other. There were also many domestic film and television companies who wanted to get a piece of the pie. Lu Chen's first 2 TV series made a large number of unknown newcomers popular. It was not an exaggeration to say that his TV series were a star-making machine. Which artist with a little ambition didn't want to get involved? Wan Jinping was a broker of the entertainment industry. It was natural for him to be asked to talk about cooperation with Lu Chun. Lu Chun was curious about the unit mentioned by the other party. "Can you tell me which unit it is?" The word unit was a little interesting. Wan Jinping hesitated for a moment, but still revealed the mystery. Shonen TV. Shonen TV. This answer was really beyond the expectations of Lu Chun and Lu Shi, so much so that his sister couldn't help but widen her eyes. Shonen TV was Lu Chen's old enemy. The enmity between the two sides can even be traced back to when Lu Chun first entered the entertainment industry. He participated in Shonen TV's Super Singer and was brushed. He switched to Singing China and jumped through the Dragon Gate, which also made Shonen TV ridiculed for having eyes but not seeing and having too many dark secrets. Later, there were even more competitions. For example, Lu Chen's Autumn in My Heart defeated the popular TV series of Shonen TV. Shonen TV also secretly made trouble for Lu Chun. However, ever since Full of Romance was broadcasted, the two sides had basically not met again. Shonen TV could not gain any advantage from Lu Chun, and it was impossible for them to publicly fall out with him. Did they still want to save face for the satellite TV station? As for Lu Chun, he would not take the initiative to provoke the other party. But he really didn't expect that Shonen TV had also taken a fancy to You from the Star and released the message of cooperation to him through Wan Jinping in a roundabout way. In fact, strictly speaking, there was no deep hatred between Lu Chun and Shonen TV. The several collisions were either caused by someone or by coincidence, far from being irreconcilable. There are no eternal friends or enemies in the world. There are eternal interests. From the perspective of interests, Lu Chen's choice to cooperate with Shonen TV is better than Beijing Television or Zhejiang Satellite TV. Because among so many satellite TV stations in China, Shonen TV is well-deserved number 1. Its influence is bigger than that of its competitors, and it can't compete with CCTV. Cooperation with such a platform will undoubtedly have a great promotion effect on Lu Chen's career. For example, if he wants to promote a Chinese ghost story and promote it through Shonen TV, the effect will definitely be very good. The most important thing is that now Shonen TV has taken the initiative to find Lu Chun. Even though they are wearing a fig leaf, it is still very rare, because with Shonen TV's status in the circle, there are really not many star artists who can make them bow their heads. Lu Shi looked at Lu Chun with an inquiring look, and her sister was also shocked and hesitant. Wan Jinping felt that he had regained some initiative. He said with a smile, "Why don't I talk about the specific conditions first?" He thought to himself that the name of Shonen TV was really powerful. However, Lu Chun only hesitated for a moment, but did not answer his question. Instead, he asked, "Golden Phoenix Award?" Wan Jinping's smile instantly froze on his face. He knew that Lu Chen's question was a question. He was questioning whether Shonen TV was using the Golden Phoenix Award as a condition for the cooperation between the two parties. In other words, Lu Chun thought that the reason why Full of Romance did not get nominated for the Golden Phoenix Award was because Shonen TV was deliberately obstructing them, leaving some leeway to negotiate the conditions. Wang Jinping suddenly realized that Lu Chun is a very proud person. But his pride is hidden deep in his bones, and he will not easily show it. He gives people the impression that he is quite modest. But it is precisely such a person who will never be threatened. That's right, it's a threat. Lu Chun thought that Shonan TV is using the Golden Phoenix Award to threaten him. This is very bad. What's worse is that if Lu Chun had such a thought, it would not be too unjust. Shonan TV. The rumor on the internet is related to Shonan TV, or to be more precise, it's related to someone in Shonan TV. Wang Jinping, who is as cunning as he is stuck again. Because he knows very well that sophistry is useless against Lu Chun. This young man is far more shrewd than his peers. Lying will only put him in a more passive situation. To be honest, Wang Jinping has never been so tired when negotiating with the elites inside and outside of the entertainment industry. Lu Xi's gaze was cold as she looked at the embarrassed Wang Jinping. Lu Chun did not rely on others' help or support to get where he is today, but his own hard work and strength. Shonan TV actually wants to use a mere Golden Phoenix Award to pressure Lu Chun. What a joke. As a result, her impression of Wang Jinping is also very bad. After a while, Wang Jinping sighed and said, "Mr. Lu Chun, please don't misunderstand. My client sincerely wants to cooperate with you, and the conditions are guaranteed to be satisfactory." He still did not give up, thinking that he can persuade Lu Chun at the end. In short, he is not willing to give up just like this. Lu Chun picked up the teacup and took a sip, then suddenly smiled. "CEO Wan, let's not beat around the bush. I will not cooperate with Shonan TV. There is no need. As for the Golden Phoenix Award..." His face showed a mocking expression. "Believe me, not being nominated is not a disgrace to me." At this moment, Lu Chun's strong confidence made Wang Jinping speechless. The frustration of failure shrouded this senior broker. Chapter 581. In the elegantly decorated private room, the fragrance of tea was lingering in the air, and the faint sound of the zither penetrated the wall, as if it was from another world. Wang Jinping's mood was very bad. He had been in the entertainment circle for more than a decade and had seen all kinds of storms and waves. He didn't expect that he would be snubbed by a young man today. What made Wang Jinping feel most depressed was that from beginning to end, it was Lu Chun who had the right to speak, so that his words were useless. This meal was a waste. Wang Jinping could only admit his failure. He put away his depressed mood and said with a forced smile, "If that's the case, then it's really a pity." In fact, the conditions offered by Shonan TV to cooperate with Lu Chun were really very generous. As the overlord of the local satellite TV stations in China, Shonan TV's strong ratings and strong capital made them invincible in the entertainment circle. But there were always exceptions. Lu Chun didn't care about Shonan TV at all, and he didn't lack money and fame. As the saying goes, a cliff is 1,000 feet high without any desire. Wang Jinping's failure was really not his fault. But in his line of work, offending people for other people's business was the most stupid thing to do. Wang Jinping didn't have any opinion of Lu Chun because of this, and he wouldn't fall out with him. After adjusting his mood, Wang Jinping raised his teacup and said, "Mr. Lu Chun, Chief Lu, we can't do business, but we'll still be friends. I hope there will be opportunities for cooperation in the future." Lu Xi nodded and raised her cup. If it wasn't necessary, she didn't want to offend this jack of all trades. Not to mention that the other party's identity wasn't good or bad. Just like how bacteria must exist in the human body, the entertainment circle also couldn't lack such people. It was naturally the best to end this peacefully. Lu Chun didn't immediately raise his cup. He looked at Wang Jinping thoughtfully and said, "Chief Wan, actually, if you want to cooperate, you don't have to wait for the future." Wang Jinping was stunned. He put down his teacup and asked, "Mr. Lu Chun, what do you mean?" Lu Chun smiled and said, "You also know that I am preparing to shoot the third TV series, You from the Star. At present, the investors and partners of this TV series have not been finalized. I wonder if President Wan is interested in getting involved? Are you interested?" Yes. It was simply too much. Wang Jinping had never thought that Lu Chun would reject Shonan TV without hesitation. He didn't even want to listen to the conditions. Instead, he threw a sweet and tempting cake to Wang Jinping. He wanted to swallow it on the spot. Even if the cake was covered with poisonous fillings, he would eat it first. One was Autumn in My Heart, and the other was Full House of Romance. It could be said that 2 TV series in 2 years had put Lu Chan and Chan Fei on the altar. Even if many people in the circle said that they were not favored by the Yulan Awards and the Golden Luan Awards, no one could deny the success of the 2 TV series. In the beginning, those who cooperated with Lu Chan, whether it was an artist, a TV station, or a film company, all made a lot of money. Lu Chen's excellent quality of not eating alone made him have an excellent reputation in the circle. So when Lu Chan decided to shoot the 3rd TV series, You from the Star, there were many people who looked for Wang Jinping as a matchmaker. Of course, the most powerful one was Shonan TV. Wang Jinping knew very well that as long as You from the Star was not shot randomly, it was bound to be a hit. The possibility of the ratings being a flop was very small. Countless people in the circle were watching it with red eyes. He knew that he had no friendship with Lu Chan. Originally, he wanted to use the power of Shonan TV to build a relationship with Lu Chan. After being rejected, he gave up, but the result was so unexpected. Fortunately, Wang Jinping was very shrewd and did not lose his composure on the spot. However, his expression also changed. Mr. Lu Chan, you are not joking with me, are you? Lu Chan couldn't help laughing. He picked up the teacup and took a sip. He said unhurriedly, I never joke when it comes to business. I can give you 5% of the limited equity shares. It doesn't matter whether you invest in your own company or pull strings for other companies. We can sign a formal contract. Wang Jinping, who had been a little hot-headed just now, quickly calmed down and weighed the pros and cons in his mind. If it had been someone else who said that he would be given 5% of the shares and limited equity investment, Wang Jinping would most likely have scoffed at it. Did Master Wan lack such little things? However, You from the Star was too tempting. Those who participated in the investment cooperation were bound to be big shots in the industry. To be honest, Lu Chan was really giving him face by giving him this opportunity. 5% of the limited equity shares seemed small, but in fact it showed Lu Chen's sincerity, because Wang Jinping believed that even Lu Chan himself could not keep too many shares. The most important thing was that with this name in hand, if it was done well, the benefits that Wang Jinping could bring to Wang Jinping would undoubtedly be extremely rich. For example, recommending a newcomer to the crew, even if it was not a very important role, as long as appropriate publicity was done, it would be too easy to make the newcomer popular. Wang Jinping was well aware of this. How many newcomers or semi-new artists in and out of the circle wanted to be popular? Thousands. Therefore, although he knew that this was most likely a bait thrown by Lu Chan, Wang Jinping still wanted to take the bait. He couldn't help but ask, Mr. Lu Chan, then what do you want? Lu Chan smiled and said, I just want to make friends with Boss Wan and leave a favor. Maybe I will ask Boss Wan for help in the future. More friends meant more paths, and friends could also be divided into many kinds. Wang Jinping's expression changed. After a while he sighed and said, I feel like I'm getting old. He knew that he couldn't resist this temptation, but thinking that he might offend Shonan TV because of this, his heart was extremely tangled, and he felt like pulling chestnuts out of the fire. Lu Chan smiled and said nothing. This was an open and above-board plot. Whether Wang Jinping agreed or not, there was no loss for him. For the TV series You from the Star, Lu Chan was only going to retain 40% to 50% of the shares for Chanfei Media, and the rest would be given to various partners. A mere 5% of the limited equity shares for Wang Jinping was nothing at all. If Wang Jinping was smart enough, he would not do it himself. It was the best choice to help others. He still had to accept Lu Chen's favor, and the initiative was always firmly in the hands of Lu Chan. After hesitating again and again, Wang Jinping finally gritted his teeth and said, Thank you, Mr. Lu Chan. Such an opportunity was also rare for him. If he missed it, he would really miss it. Lu Chan nodded and said, Well, you can contact Boss Lu for the details. Since he had made a decision, Wang Jinping no longer hesitated. He picked up his teacup again and said, Happy cooperation. Lu Chan and Lu Shi looked at each other and smiled, also picking up their teacups. Happy cooperation. Chapter 582. Back in the car, Lu Shi stared at Lu Chan. At first, Lu Chan didn't notice it, but soon he was scared by his sister's strange eyes. What's wrong? Lu Shi stretched out her finger and pointed at his forehead, saying, I'm wondering if you are my younger brother. Lu Chun broke into a sweat. If I'm not your younger brother, who else can I be? Lu Shi said very seriously. Your body is a shell, but I suspect that there is a 1,000-year-old ghost hidden inside. Lu Chun didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Sister, when did you start reading online novels? Lu Shi said. You have given me too many surprises in the past 2 years. I can't believe everything now. She felt it from the bottom of her heart. In the past 2 years, Lu Chun rose rapidly in the entertainment circle like a comet, lighting up the sky that belonged to him. From pop music to film and television, the amazing talent he showed not only stunned people inside and outside the circle, but also made his sister, who was the most familiar with him, feel incredible. And tonight, in the competition between Lu Chun and Wang Jinping, he played this old fox in the palm of his hand. He paid a small price to win over a powerful ally, which really opened Lu Shi's eyes. If it were her, she would never have performed better. It was just that this was not the playful and willful younger brother she was familiar with. Lu Shi also knew that Lu Chun had changed a lot in the past 2 years. Maybe he had really matured after experiencing hardships, but she always had a feeling that she was still in a dream. Sometimes she was afraid that after waking up from the dream, everything would no longer exist, and everything would be the same as before. Lu Chun held his sister's hand and said, I am still the same person. I have never changed. It was just that in his mind there was an additional memory of the world. Lu Shi felt Lu Chun's sincerity. She smiled, and the atmosphere in the car became very warm. Time passed quickly, and so did their footsteps. The sister and brother hadn't had a heart-to-heart talk for a long time. Ding-ling-ling. Unfortunately, the phone suddenly rang and broke the tacit warmth. Lu Shi took out her phone from her bag and answered. Hello. Yes, I've already eaten. I'm going home with Lu Chun. Ah? It's quite late now. Then all right then. After saying a few words, she hung up the phone. Lu Chun asked curiously. Who was that? Lu Shi hesitated for a moment and replied. It's Mu Shi. She asked me to do yoga and spa in the evening. Lu Chun suddenly had a bad feeling. Sis, does Li Mushi often ask you out? You know she... Lu Shi blushed and said. I know, but she doesn't have that kind of feeling for me. We are very good friends now. I don't have any friends in the capital, so... Lu Chun was speechless. Although they were brother and sister, he couldn't interfere in his sister's private life. Then you should pay attention to yourself. Lu Shi glared at him and said. Pay attention to what? Mu Shi is not a tiger. Can she eat me? Brother Zhang, you can just drop me off at the intersection ahead. Zhang Xiaofeng, who was a part-time driver, agreed and turned the steering wheel to pull over. Lu Shi patted Lu Chun on the shoulder and said, Don't think about it. I'll get off here. It's very close to the clubhouse. You should rest early. Let's talk about it tomorrow. What else could Lu Chun say? He could only agree with a wry smile. He really wanted to call Li Mushi and warn her not to have any thoughts about Lu Shi, but he didn't know how to say it. He could only be confused. When he returned home, Lu Chun was still very depressed. However, his depression only lasted until he opened the door and disappeared in an instant. When did you come back? The pretty girl standing behind the door. Who else could it be but Chan Fei? During this time, Chan Fei was not in the capital. Her daily schedule was full. Today she was in Shanghai, and tomorrow she might fly to the deep sea. This was the result of rejecting many notices and advertisements. Relying on the 2 popular TV series, Autumn in My Heart, and Full of Romance, Chan Fei was definitely one of the most expensive female stars in the entertainment industry. Few could match her popularity. Although she was in love with Lu Chun, and the money she had earned could not be spent in several lifetimes, she had never considered staying at home and being a little woman in love. For her, her career was the most important source of youth and vitality. In this respect alone, Chan Fei worked harder than Lu Chun. Perhaps it was because of this that she felt a little sorry for Lu Chun and wanted to find an opportunity to make up for it. Chan Fei threw herself into his arms and said with a sweet smile, I just came back. I have a little surprise for you. Before she could finish her words, Lu Chun's mouth covered hers. The two had known and loved each other for a long time. Usually they did not spend much time together, but their feelings for each other did not weaken because of this. Instead, as time passed, their feelings became stronger. With a beautiful woman in his arms, Lu Chan immediately put his sister's matter to the back of his mind and fell into an intoxicated gentleness. It was a charming night. 2 days later, on the evening of March 19th, the Golden Luan Awards Committee announced the nominations for all 39 categories of the 2017 Golden Luan Awards on its official website. Among them, the 2016 TV ratings champion Full of Romance was nominated for Best Screenplay, Best Music, and Best Editing. It did not win any heavyweight awards such as Best Director, Best Actor or Actress, Most Popular Actor or Actress, etc. This was different from the news that was circulating on the internet a few days ago. Full of Romance did not win anything at the Golden Luan Awards. Lu Chan did not feel that it was strange because, as he said to Wang Jinping, if Full of Romance really did not win a single nomination, he would definitely not be the one who would be embarrassed. The 3 small and medium awards were the Golden Luan Awards Committee's fig leaf. I think we will win an award and it will most likely be Best Music, Lu Chan said to Lu Xi and Chan Fair. So, just send a representative. I think Chen Xian will do. Chen Xian was Lu Chen's former colleague who worked at KFC. Now, she was the assistant to the general manager of Chenfei Media. Lu Xi hesitated. Isn't that a bad idea? That would be too disrespectful to the Golden Luan Awards. Lu Chen smiled and said, then send 2 more representatives. 3 nominations for 3 people. That's just right. The other party had already thrown a slap at him, and he still had to put his face forward? If he offended them, so be it. Lu Chan did not rely on the awards to make a living, and he knew very well who was making things difficult for him. The serious thing was that a Chinese ghost story was about to be released in the country, and the promotion had just reached the most important stage. How could he still have the mood to fight with others? If there are any interviews, reject them all. No comment. Chapter 583. In the 27th Golden Luan Awards, out of the 39 nominations, the biggest winner was the long-running TV series, Great Song Dynasty. This 85-episode historical drama had been broadcasted on CCTV last year. Its ratings were quite good and the Golden Luan Awards liked it. As a result, it received 12 nominations, including Best Director, Best Long Drama, Best Actor, Best Screenplay. After Great Song Dynasty was Battle in the Sand City. It was a 37-episode military drama, produced by Shonan TV and the United Nations. It received a total of 9 nominations. In comparison, Full House of Romance's 3 nominations for Best Screenplay, Best Music, and Best Editing were pitifully weak. Be it Great Song Dynasty or Battle in the Sand City, their ratings and influence could not be compared to Full House of Romance. It was just that both dramas were shrouded in the light of main themes. This was a little ridiculous. The Golden Luan Awards was different from the Yulan Awards. The latter was a legitimate government award, judged by expert judges. It was normal to promote the main themes. The Golden Luan Awards, on the other hand, was voted on by the audience. In the end, the nominees were not the ones that the audience liked the most. That made people want to complain. As a result, when the nominations were announced, the official blog of the Golden Luan Awards, Waves, was instantly swallowed up by the flood of people. Most of them were angry for Full House of Romance. Please explain the criteria for the nominations. Why did Full House of Romance only get a few small nominations? Just change the name of the Golden Luan Awards to the Black Bird Awards. They're all black. Are you guys kidding me? My great Lu Chan can't even get a nomination for Most Popular Actor? Hee hee. Do you guys know what the ratings for Full House of Romance were last year? Let me give you a friendly reminder. Full House of Romance won the ratings in Korea. Boycott the Bullsh T Awards. What people complained about the most was that Full House of Romance had no Most Popular Actor or Actress. It was fine if they didn't get any nominations for Best Director and Best Long Drama. These 2 awards should be decided by the audience. Yet, Lu Chan and Chan Fair couldn't even get a nomination. It was an insult to everyone's intelligence. The judges of the Golden Luan Awards knew very well that once they nominated Full of Romance, there would be no suspense at all unless they cheated during the vote counting process. So they might as well just erase it. There were many intelligent netizens, and they could easily see through the Golden Luan Awards judging committee's intentions. For a moment, the blog was flooded with scolding, and public opinion was turbulent. However, Hoping that online public opinion could influence the Golden Luan Awards judging committee would be a big mistake. Since they dared to bring out this nomination, they weren't afraid of being scolded at all. The Golden Luan Awards had been scolded for many years. The official V's face was bulletproof. No matter how much saliva and bricks flew in the comments section, it remained unmoved. Then it quickly deleted a large number of posts and banned them. In the end, it simply closed the comments section. This kind of roguish performance of a dead pig, not afraid of boiling water, made angry netizens helpless. Many fans of Liu Chen and Chen Fei could only flock to their blogs to pour out their dissatisfaction and express their support for their idols. Many fans thought that Liu Chen and Chen Fei would feel a sense of loss. After all, the biennial Golden Luan Awards was still very influential in the domestic television industry. The honor of being a TV empress and TV empress was quite tempting. However, they didn't know that whether it was Liu Chen or Chen Fei, they had long lost interest in the Golden Luan Awards. The two had no intention of getting involved in this war of words. They didn't express their stance at all, and they even refused to be interviewed by the media. At present, the focus of Chen Fei Media's work was the domestic promotion of the movie, A Chinese Ghost Story, and the preparation of the TV series, You from the Star. They didn't have the time or energy to meddle in the muddy waters of the Golden Luan Awards. For the two of them, it didn't matter whether Full House of Romance was nominated or won an award. In any case, whoever wanted to play could play. On March 20th, the sci-fi blockbuster Showdown on Vulcan, which was shot by Superstar Pictures with a US $170 million investment, was released in all three major cinemas in China at the same time. The number of screenings was 38, 76%, and the box office was 127 million. Nowadays, the domestic film market was extremely popular. Since 2010, as many as 30 to 40 movies had a box office of more than 100 million on the first day. Among them, Hollywood blockbusters firmly occupied half of the market. The results were extremely impressive. Movies that were popular in North America often had a high box office in China. After years of painstaking management of the domestic market, Hollywood had long accumulated a wealth of experience on how to promote in China. They were very clear about what to rely on to impress the domestic film audience. Most importantly, Hollywood's big film companies had a very close relationship with the three major cinemas in China. Therefore, whenever a blockbuster was introduced, it would receive a very high number of screenings, which pushed up the box office. Therefore, it was normal for Showdown on Vulcan to earn a box office of 127 million on the first day. In the next half month, it would also form a strong pressure on other movies that were released at the same time. On April 9th, another Hollywood blockbuster, Legend of the Holy Land, would be released in China. This could not help but make people sweat for the domestic films that were released during this period. Although the box office of domestic films was not bad at the moment, relying on youth idol films and popular IP blockbusters to defend their territory, the situation was definitely not optimistic if they were attacked by two powerful Hollywood blockbusters at the same time. Liu Chen's A Chinese Ghost Story was stuck in the middle. Although the timing could not be said to be too bad, it still made the industry worried. The voices of pessimism were endless, and it was generally believed that it was impossible to replicate the success in Xinjiang. When A Chinese Ghost Story was released in Xinjiang, its main competitor was The Painted Skin. It had not collided with Hollywood blockbusters, and there was a natural disadvantage in terms of investment and publicity. It was worth mentioning that The Painted Skin had already been released on March 14th. In the week of the 20th, it only earned 32 million yuan at the box office. On the 20th, it fell to 2 million yuan. It was very likely that it would repeat the same mistakes in Xinjiang, and it was very likely that it would be cancelled in advance. The Painted Skin was a Sino-Hong Kong co-production, and it could enjoy the support policy of Xinjiang's new films. There was a basic guarantee of screenings in cinemas, but it was only limited to the first week. Cinemas were very realistic. The seats in cinemas were such precious resources that they would definitely not leave them for those films that were not popular with the audience. The winner takes all was the rule here. The Painted Skin was obviously not the winner. In fact, this movie had already worked very hard in the domestic publicity. Huaguan Pictures was also a big company in the industry, but the reputation of this movie was too bad. It barely passed the score on several movie websites. Therefore, when measuring the opponents, Chunfei Media did not include the Painted Skin at all. The Showdown on Vulcan and Legend of the Holy Land were the real opponents. Chapter 584. On March 21st, the box office of the decisive Battle of Vulcan exceeded 200 million in 2 days. According to this trend, the total box office of this Hollywood blockbuster was basically no problem to exceed 1 billion, and it was normal to reach 1.2 billion or 300 million, but it would be quite difficult to go higher, such as 1.5 billion. After 2 days of screening, the reputation of the decisive Battle of Vulcan on the internet showed a two-tier trend. Those who liked the film thought that the special effects of the film were excellent, the plot was exciting, and the climax was continuous from the beginning to the end, which was completely worth the price of the ticket. The evaluation of the audience who didn't like the decisive Battle of Vulcan was a typical popcorn Hollywood blockbuster. Except for the special effects and battle scenes, everything else was not worth mentioning. The story was full of loopholes, and it was nothing more than giving people a strong feeling of excitement. Everyone had seen many similar blockbusters, and there was not much novelty. Not to mention those positive comments, these negative comments alone actually reflected a problem faced by Hollywood movies in China, that is, the serious situation of homogenization of imported blockbusters. They were too focused on special effects and ignored the plot and characterization. It was like a delicious dish served to the audience sprinkled with MSG. Young people were relatively more fond of it, and they were also the main audience of such Hollywood blockbusters. Of course, there was no shortage of real high-quality works in Hollywood movies, but it was difficult for that kind of artistic film to be introduced into China, and the box office after it was introduced was often very poor, and it was not liked by cinemas. It was precisely because of this, coupled with the state's protection policy for domestic films, that Hollywood blockbusters had a huge impact on the domestic film market, and domestic films could also occupy a place in the past decade. However, the youth idol films and popular IP movies that domestic relied on as the main market were also facing a serious problem of homogenization, which made the domestic film market more and more popular, and the future was also uncertain. Liu Chan led Chunfei Media and wanted to seize territory in this huge market. Strength, connections, luck, and opportunities were indispensable. As a newcomer to the film industry, he was not favored by many people in the industry. At 8 o'clock on March 26th, one of the largest portals in China, the variety entertainment program, Weekly Movie Talk of EasyNet Video was broadcast on time, which involved Liu Chan and a Chinese ghost story. With the further opening of the domestic film market, the number of Hollywood blockbusters entering the domestic market will continue to increase. The Domestic Film Protection Month will eventually be cancelled. In recent years, Japanese and Korean movies have suddenly emerged as a new force. Many excellent works have been introduced into the country, forming an encirclement around domestic movies. Therefore, the situation is very grim, and there is a possibility that the market share will be further reduced. The guest sitting in the live broadcast room said with fervor and assurance, "Therefore, if domestic films want to break out of the tight encirclement, the key lies in the film production institutions. Domestic film companies need to become bigger and stronger. In terms of technology, they need to catch up with the international mainstream. In terms of content, they need to fit the domestic market and invest more funds in development." The online variety show Weekly Movie Talk was one of the famous programs of EasyNet Video. It aired once a week, and each episode would invite a well-known figure in the film industry, such as a director, actor, producer, screenwriter, film critic, etc., to comment on the movie that was released that week and predict the new movie that would be released next week. The number of views on this program is very high. This issue of Weekly Movie Talk invited the well-known columnist and film critic, Wang Xiaoxiu. It was not Wang Xiaoxiu's first time on this program, and he was very familiar with the host. In addition, online programs had a lot more freedom than TV programs, so he was very open with his words and did not have too many scruples. This week, Showdown of Vulcan has already won 500 million in the box office. It is inevitable that it will exceed 1 billion. From this, we should see that the successful Hollywood film companies are basically giants. There are very few small and medium-sized film companies. In contrast, our domestic film production units are many but scattered. It seems that the scale is considerable, but in fact, the strength of the individual is not strong enough, so it is naturally difficult for them to defeat their opponents. The host nodded in agreement and said, "What you said is very reasonable, and next week there will be 2 new domestic films that will be released. One is Our Youth Is Not Lonely, and the other is A Chinese Ghost Story." While the host was introducing, the trailers of the 2 movies appeared on the big screen behind him. "Teacher Wang, what do you think of these 2 new domestic films?" Wang Xiaoshu turned his gaze away from the screen and said, "I have seen the trailers of these 2 new films. Needless to say, Our Youth Is Not Lonely is still a youth idol film. From the trailer, there are not many new tricks. There should be a box office. After all, this film market has always been there. As for the movie A Chinese Ghost Story," he shook his head. The host was sensitive. "You don't think it's good?" Wang Xiaoshu smiled and said, "I don't think it's good. The reason is very simple. A Chinese Ghost Story is a fantasy ghost film adapted from the story of Strange Tales from a Chinese studio, and Painted Skin of the same genre has already been released on the 14th. The box office has only been around 40 million so far. Whether it's the cast or the investment, Painted Skin is bigger than A Chinese Ghost Story, and there are more special effects scenes. In the end, it can't even recover its cost, which means that the audience doesn't like this kind of film. Coupled with the high screening rate of Decisive Battle of Vulcan, A Chinese Ghost Story will not perform better than Painted Skin." The host had a different opinion. "Teacher Wang, as far as I know, A Chinese Ghost Story has a box office of over 100 million in Hong Kong. Its reputation and box office are better than Painted Skin." Wang Xiaoshu disagreed. "The situation in Hong Kong is very different from that in China. The audience there prefers ghost films, and when A Chinese Ghost Story was released, there were no Hollywood blockbusters at the same time, and..." After a pause he said, "And the box office of A Chinese Ghost Story is over 100 million. It is said that the peripheral products have been sold for tens of millions. To be honest, I don't believe this." Wang Xiaoshu's doubts about the box office of A Chinese Ghost Story in Hong Kong. Although he did not say it out loud, anyone could tell from the expression on his face. Probably feeling that this topic was too sensitive, the host quickly changed the topic. "Teacher Wang, what do you think of the recent appearance of the film market?" The morning after the weekly movie talk was broadcast online, Lu Chan only watched it once in his office. Originally, Lu Chan did not know about this show, but his fans and the show's guest, Wang Xiaoshu, started fighting on the Waves blog, causing a lot of noise. Chapter 585. Weekly Movie Talk was one of the famous programs of EasyNet Video. Every week it would appear on the homepage, so the number of views was quite high. The number of views on the same day was as many as tens of millions, and it had a fixed group of netizens. Therefore, when the episode of Weekly Movie Talk was broadcast on March 26th, it was quickly forwarded to blogs and forums, causing Lu Chen's fans to explode. Recently, because of the Golden Phoenix Award nomination, Lu Chen's fan group, with Lu Jiajun as the core, was quite unhappy. Many people felt injustice for their idol, but they could not find an outlet to vent. Now they saw Wang Xiaoshu belittling A Chinese Ghost Story in the program, and even hinted that the Hong Kong box office of A Chinese Ghost Story was falsified. How could everyone tolerate this? The anger that they had been holding back immediately turned into cannon fire, blasting towards Wang Xiaoshu. The main battlefield was naturally on the blog of Waves. Countless fans attacked Wang Xiaoshu's remarks in the comments section. Just by looking at the trailer, you came to the conclusion that A Chinese Ghost Story is not good. Isn't it too easy to be a film critic? Don't speak without thinking if you don't understand. Why don't you believe that A Chinese Ghost Story has a box office of more than 100 million in Hong Kong? Please don't represent the audience. Do you think we don't like ghost movies just because we don't like them? T film critics, they only know how to talk nonsense. I'm sorry, I've seen A Chinese Ghost Story in Hong Kong. The box office is that good. Speak without evidence. Be careful that Lu Chan will sue you for slander. A Chinese Ghost Story is 10 streets ahead of Painted Skin. The domestic box office will definitely not be bad. Be careful that you get slapped in the face. The main focus of the fans' bombardment was Wang Xiaoshu's doubts about the Hong Kong box office of A Chinese Ghost Story, especially the sales results of the peripheral products of A Chinese Ghost Story. He did not believe it at all, so he obviously showed a disdainful and mocking attitude in the program. To be honest, apart from the box office, it was not unreasonable for Wang Xiaoshu to doubt the sales performance of the peripheral products of A Chinese Ghost Story, because this market was basically firmly controlled by Hollywood movies. In China, of course, including the practitioners in Hong Kong, it was not that they didn't know how rich the benefits of movie peripheral products were, but there were some things that they couldn't learn even if they wanted to. It was not that no one had tried to develop this market, but the result was often that they were badly injured. After suffering too many losses, the people in the industry lost confidence. Even if it was a movie with a box office of more than 1 billion yuan, they had no intention of investing in the peripherals. They would be satisfied with a share of the box office. At most, they would release some posters and albums. Based on Wang Xiaoshu's understanding of the domestic and Hong Kong film market, he did not believe that Lu Chun would spend money on peripheral products in advance, unless he had the ability to predict the future and knew that his movie would be a hit. The production of many peripheral products needed to be prepared for a long time in advance. Many things involved design, mold opening, processing, packaging, and many other processes. Therefore, it was inconceivable to advertise that A Chinese Ghost Story had sold more than 40 million yuan of peripherals in Hong Kong. How much did they have to prepare in advance? Wang Xiaoshu analyzed it according to common sense and concluded that the sales data were fake, but he did not know where Lu Chen's confidence came from. This columnist and film critic had always been known for his sharp writing and straightforward speech. In the face of the bombardment of thousands of Lu Chun fans, he would not close the comments like the Golden Luan Awards official blog and be a coward. Instead, he fought back, unwilling to be outdone. Wang Xiaoshu updated his blog as soon as possible, using thousands of words to respond to the voices of doubt, and replying to and refuting the comments of many netizens. His words were quite fierce. In the new blog post, he listed a lot of data and examples to prove that A Chinese Ghost Story would not have much of a market in China. In the face of the attack of 2 Hollywood blockbusters, it would inevitably do nothing. At most, it would earn a few fans New Year's money, and the sales of peripheral products would be a joke. Wang Xiaoshu said sarcastically. A Chinese Ghost Story was chosen to be released at this time. Other than proving that Lu Chun had been blinded by his previous success, he was basically digging his own grave. Reality would teach Lu Chun a harsh lesson. As for Lu Chun's fans, Wang Xiaoshu was even more impolite. He directly denounced them as Internet Water Army and Internet Mob. Wang Xiaoshu's tough attitude, coupled with his sarcastic response, made the battle that broke out on the blog even more intense. More and more Lu Chun fans joined in, and it even affected Lu Chun to a certain extent. One had to know that Wang Xiaoshu was considered half a person in the industry. He had his own friends and connections in the entertainment and literary circles. In the face of so many people besieging him, there would definitely be people who would stand up for him. Many well-known bloggers had expressed their support for Wang Xiaoshu in their own blogs, either vaguely or clearly. They believed that his judgment of A Chinese Ghost Story was not wrong, and even hinted that someone was using it to hype up the movie. This online war of words really made the keyword, A Chinese Ghost Story, appear on the homepage of Waves's blog. In such a situation, Lu Chun, who had been shot, could not remain indifferent. All along, Lu Chun had attached great importance to his fan group. A large part of the work of Lu Chun Studio was to manage his fans. Fans made a star, and an artist without fans was nothing. However, sometimes fans would also cause trouble for a star. For example, this blog battle. In the eyes of outsiders, it seemed that Lu Chun had something to do with it. Of course, Lu Chun could say nothing, or say a few words casually, but this would inevitably hurt the hearts of those fans who supported him enthusiastically. Many fans were very sensitive and fragile. Therefore, after careful consideration, and at the same time consulting the company's media and public relations department, Lu Chun posted a new blog post on his personal blog at 8 p.m. on the 28th. In this blog post, he first thanked his fans for their support, and also thanked everyone for their love for A Chinese Ghost Story. At the same time, he hoped that everyone would treat those unfavorable comments rationally, and not use profanity to scold people on the internet. This was because everyone had the freedom to express their thoughts, but this freedom should not be unlimited. Looking back at the past 6 months, Lu Chun was very proud because he had written, directed, and acted in his first personal movie and had won very good results and a good reputation in Hong Kong. Now that A Chinese Ghost Story was about to be released in China, it would meet a large number of fans. Although he was facing the strong pressure of 2 Hollywood blockbusters, he was confident that he could achieve the goal he had set for A Chinese Ghost Story. That was to break 500 million yuan in the domestic box office and sell more than 100 million yuan of peripheral products. Chapter 586. The publicity work for A Chinese Ghost Story, which would be released on April 2nd, had already begun. The budget of 30 million was not too much, but it was enough to ensure that most of the audience in the country knew that the movie was going to be released. However, compared to the 2 Hollywood blockbusters, The Final Battle of Vulcan and Legend of the Holy Land, A Chinese Ghost Story, was undoubtedly in a weak position. Chunfei Media also had no intention of provoking a huge publicity war, and was more or less keeping a low profile. Therefore, when Lu Chen shouted on his blog that the domestic box office will exceed 500 million and the sales of peripheral products exceed 100 million, it inevitably caused a lot of repercussions in the industry. In the past decade, the box office of domestically produced films had also increased significantly with the popularity of the domestic film market. Among them, there were many popular films that had invested tens of millions of yuan and had a box office of hundreds of millions of yuan. However, these were basically youth idol films. Most of them were adapted from best-selling novels or online novels. The investment for A Chinese Ghost Story was only tens of millions of yuan. The target of 500 million yuan domestic box office did not seem high, but the actual situation was not like that at all. That was because there were fewer and fewer films with low cost and high box office. Even youth idol films were a little difficult to play, let alone ghost films. If A Chinese Ghost Story had invested hundreds of millions or even 200 to 300 million yuan, it might have been able to attract a lot of audience members with the influence of the original work. However, a mere 30 million yuan investment, even if it was all spent on special effects, how many minutes of content could it produce? Without exciting special effects, how could A Chinese Ghost Story attract domestic film audiences? The appreciation of domestic audiences was very different from that of Hong Kong audiences. Ghost films were definitely a niche film. Wang Xiaoshu's analysis of A Chinese Ghost Story was very reasonable. What exactly made Lu Chen so confident? It was one thing to have a box office of 500 million yuan, but he actually shouted the slogan of more than 100 million yuan for the peripheral products. It was really shocking. Many people in the industry felt that Lu Chen was really a little too arrogant. Perhaps his development had been too smooth in the past 2 years, so he believed too much in his own influence. He had forgotten that movies were different from television and pop music. If Lu Chen were to make a youth idol film, he would not have to worry about the box office. This kind of fantasy film was not something that a newcomer could easily handle. However, there were also a few people in the industry who supported Lu Chen. They had seen the original version of A Chinese Ghost Story and had a positive and admiring attitude towards the movie. They said a few good things about Lu Chen on their blogs. However, such voices were very weak, and the general public was not optimistic about it. In Lu Chen's blog post, although Wang Xiaoshu's name was not mentioned at all, the film critic still took it as a provocation to himself and quickly posted a new blog post. The content of the blog post was very simple. There were only 4 words: wait and see. Wang Xiaoshu was a mature scholar. He had his own insistence and stubbornness. When he was serious, he was also very sharp. However, he would not play silly games with others, such as making a bet with Lu Chen that he would eat a keyboard or run around naked. The words wait and see were enough to show his attitude. Lu Chen's fans were naturally very supportive of Lu Chen's blog post. Don't say anything else. I will contribute at least 5 movie tickets. The peripheral products will depend on the situation. A box office of more than 500 million is too conservative. I think it can break 800 million. 1 billion. Support me, Chen. I will take my girlfriend to watch A Chinese Ghost Story. The box office and reputation in Xiangjiang are so good. I don't believe that it will fail in China. It will definitely work. Big Lu Chen. Can you tell me what kind of peripheral products there are? I'm curious too. Needless to say, Lu Chen really responded to the questions raised by his fans about the peripheral products. He updated his blog again the next night and released dozens of photos. These photos were all related to the peripheral products of a Chinese ghost story, including the doll figurines that were the most popular in Xiangjiang. However, they were not artistic close-up photos, but finished stock photos. That's right. What Luchan posted on his blog were finished stock photos of various peripheral products. In addition to the various versions of the main characters in the film, there were also soundtracks, movie novels, commemorative albums, accessories, and so on. There was a dazzling lineup of everything. The key was that in a large warehouse the stock was full. The stock of these peripheral products was ordered by the factory when Luchan was still in Xiangjiang. He mainly focused on the domestic market, and the quantity had more than doubled. At present, the goods had basically arrived and were shipped to the capital. The purchasing power of the audience in Xiangjiang was relatively strong, and the number of domestic audiences was large. Under the overall balance, Luchan set a sales target of 100 million for a Chinese ghost story. This goal should be said to be very ambitious, because many peripheral products of Hollywood blockbusters did not sell well in China, let alone domestic films. However, the success in Xiangjiang gave Luchan enough confidence. On the one hand, these stock photos were to prove his confidence, and on the other hand, it was also a powerful counterattack to Wang Xiaoshu's questioning remarks. If he did not have the confidence to recover the cost, would he produce so many products? In fact, in his previous blog, Luchan had already posted a few photos of the peripheral products, but that kind of artistic photos obviously could not be compared with this kind of show-off stock photos, and it immediately caused a lot of shock among his fans. Wow! There are so many, can you give me one? The puppet figurines are so cute. I must buy a set when the time comes. Where are the local tycoons? Give a big exclusive sale to the group members. Bye. Finally, Luchan said in his blog that these peripheral products had begun to be shipped to the surrounding stores of the major cinemas. By April 2nd, they would definitely be on the counter, and he hoped that everyone would support them. Of course, the fans had to support him. Luchan's confidence also came from the group of loyal and cute fans he had. He could get millions of tips for a live broadcast, so how could he not sell the peripheral products for more than 100 million? In the face of Luchan's counterattack, Wang Xiaoshu was silent. Perhaps he was shocked by Luchan's generosity, or perhaps he was waiting and see. In short, he did not compete with Luchan's fans anymore. Everyone's attention was quickly diverted. The publicity for a Chinese ghost story was still in full swing. Luchan even broke the previous practice, ran a number of announcements, and appeared on several shows in a row to promote the film. Not only Luchan, but Chun Fei are also spared no effort to use his own connections and influence to promote a Chinese ghost story. The entire Chun Fei media was in a state of fanatical work. Everything was just for the arrival of April 2nd. Chapter 587. Brothers, I'll be leaving in half an hour. Qi Haoyun's fingers flew as he tapped on the keyboard and said in the QQ group, "Let's meet at the cinema." As soon as his message was sent, a large number of responses immediately emerged in the group. "I'm already on the way. Haha, I'm also in a taxi, but Huainan Road is very congested now. The road is very difficult to walk on. Hey, I'm taking my girlfriend to watch a Chinese ghost story tonight. Are you jealous?" "What's there to be jealous about? I'll take two. What the hell, you guys are beasts. I haven't even eaten yet, and you're all going out?" "I'm also ready to leave. I can finally see Brother Housey. Then you have to be prepared to vomit." Although he was ridiculed by the group members, Qi Hao was not angry at all. He laughed and said, "Get lost." Qi Hao is a member of Jinling Luchan's fan club. Because of his online name, his seniority and easygoing temperament, everyone affectionately calls him Brother Housey. Qi Hao is one of Luchan's earliest fans. When Luchan opened the live broadcast of Starlight Show, he was one of the audience and rewarded Luchan with a lot of stars. Later, when Luchan fell out with Starlight Show, Qi Hao followed him to Whale TV. He likes Luchan's music very much, and can be said to be a hardcore fan of Luchan. The most important thing is that Qi Hao once studied music and can be regarded as half a professional. He often comments on Luchan's songs in forums, Tieba, and QQ groups. His analysis is reasonable and interesting. Because he also has a lot of fans, he has a high prestige in the fan club. Although Qi Hao did not hold any position in Jinling Luchan's fan club, his appeal in the fan club of 5,000 people is very strong. Tonight's movie booking activity was initiated by him and received strong support from the group members. A few days ago, Chi Hao had made a suggestion in the group. Everyone should pool their funds and book a large theater to watch a Chinese ghost story on the day of its premiere as a form of support for Lu Chan. As soon as he made this suggestion, the group members responded like a tide, expressing that there were countless people who wanted to participate. Moreover, the fundraising was completed in a very short period of time. Then Chi Hao contacted a large local cinema and booked a hall that could accommodate 700 people. But even so, there were still many group members who did not make it in time, or even if they made it in time, they could not get a place. Many of the group members had prepared 2 copies at that time, and they had brought their boyfriends or girlfriends to watch it together. Thus, the quota was occupied. With too many monks and not enough porridge, those who wanted to join in the fun were very dissatisfied and caused a ruckus in the group. In desperation, Chi Hao had to crowdfund again and booked the other 2 movie halls of the same cinema at the same time. However, it still couldn't satisfy everyone's needs. However, there was no other way. This was because the theater only had so many screenings for a Chinese ghost story. In order to meet the needs of the booking, the time was specially adjusted. Otherwise, under normal circumstances, the 3 movie halls would not play a new film with a low screening rate at the same time. The screening of a Chinese ghost story in the 3 major cinemas in the country had been announced on the official blog a few days ago. The average was 15.75%, which was already very good. As one of the films supported by the China-Hong Kong New Films, A Chinese Ghost Story enjoyed a 10% basic screening guarantee in the first week of the domestic cinemas, but they could not guarantee a specific time and a higher screening rate. The 5.75% was the result of Chunfei Media's efforts. In addition to the public relations of the cinemas, publicity was also indispensable. Lu Chan and Chen Feier's connections in the circle also played a role, so the schedule was not too bad. It was also because of the strong performance of Decisive Battle of Vulcan that seriously squeezed the market space of A Chinese Ghost Story. If A Chinese Ghost Story did not perform well, then the screening rate would drop at any time. Cinemas were very realistic. The most important factor that affected their screening was the box office. Since Decisive Battle of Vulcan was released on March 20th, it had been nearly 2 weeks and the box office had exceeded 800 million yuan. In the absence of strong competitors, this Hollywood blockbuster screening rate in cinemas remained high. It was said that the American Superstar Pictures intended to apply to the SARFT for an extension to further increase the box office results. Although there were very few Hollywood blockbusters that received the extension treatment, the chances of Decisive Battle of Vulcan succeeding were very small. This fully showed the current situation of this Hollywood blockbuster in the domestic film market. The more popular Decisive Battle of Vulcan was, the greater the pressure on A Chinese Ghost Story that was released today. Chi Hao, who had been paying attention to the blog, knew this very well. He had also participated in the war of words with the film critic Wang Xiaoxiu. Although he had confidence in Lu Chan, he did not think that Wang Xiaoxiu's analysis was reasonable. However, this did not shake Chi Hao's support for Lu Chan. The fact that he had come forward to organize this screening was a manifestation of this support. Chi Hao, who lived alone, had his dinner at a small restaurant outside. After eating, he rushed to the cinema. The cinema that the fan support group had booked belonged to the Guangying cinema chain. It was located in a large shopping mall and was very close to Chi Hao's rented apartment. It was a 10-minute walk away. This Guangying cinema had been open for less than a year. The equipment and facilities were very new, and the service was quite good. The movie tickets for the cinema had already been sent to everyone's mobile phones via QQ. After showing the cinema staff the ID of the movie ticket and scanning it, Chi Hao received his own bucket of popcorn and a cup of Coke and strode into Hall 1. The spacious hall was brightly lit, and more than half of the 700 seats were already occupied. Although the screening schedule in the cinema was very tight, and even if they booked the whole place, they wouldn't leave too much room, such a situation still stunned Chi Hao. It should be known that there were still about 20 minutes before the first movie was broadcasted. Isn't this Brother Housie? Just as Chi Hao was looking around for his seat, a fan who came early found him and recognized Chi Hao. Chi Hao had previously posted a photo in the QQ group. He was relatively famous in the fan group. When the other party shouted, almost everyone turned their heads and looked over. Chi Hao instantly became the focus of attention. Most people had never seen Chi Hao in person, so most of their eyes were filled with strong curiosity. This made Chi Hao feel very embarrassed. He could only smile awkwardly and wave his hand. Hi, good evening everyone. The next moment the scene exploded. Chapter 588. Most of the fans of the support group who came to participate in this movie event were strangers in real life. However, on the internet and in the QQ group, many people's IDs were familiar to the ear. Chi Hao was undoubtedly one of them. He was also one of the initiators and organizers of the event. Therefore, when Chi Hao appeared at the scene, many fans stood up and greeted him warmly, regardless of whether they knew him or not. Damn, this is Brother Haozi. And at least 1/10 as handsome as me. That's pretty good. Brother Haozi, come to me. I'm old donkey. Haha, I finally saw the real person. It was worth the ticket price. Wife, come and see Brother Haozi. Everyone was so enthusiastic that Chi Hao, who had a bucket of popcorn in one hand and a can of Coke in the other, couldn't refuse. He had to greet them one by one. Those who were not familiar with him first got familiar with him, and those who were familiar with him laughed and said a few words. After a while, time passed quickly, and more people came to the movie hall. Seeing that the movie was about to start, the lights in the movie hall gradually dimmed. Chi Hao, who was already sweating profusely, was finally able to get away and find his seat to sit down. As a result, when he pressed his butt against the seat, he accidentally dropped the bucket of popcorn in his hand. Ah! The scattered popcorn spilled on the neighboring seat, causing the other party to let out a crisp cry. It was a girl. Chi Hao stood with a dumbfounded face and apologized repeatedly. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. Look. He, who rarely interacted with girls, wished he could find a hole to burrow into. It was too shameful. It doesn't matter. The girl next to him chuckled and said, Fortunately, it's not a can of Coke. Sit down, the movie is about to start. Chi Hao breathed a big sigh of relief and quickly sat down. At this time, he clearly saw the other party's appearance. It was also at this moment that Chi Hao swore to the heavens, to the earth, and to thousands of gods and Buddhas that he saw an angel, or rather the lover of his dreams. The girl was in her 20s, wearing a goose yellow down jacket, with a round face, shoulder-length hair, very white skin, big eyes with long eyelashes, and a dimple on her right cheek when she smiled. Her appearance was not very beautiful, but there was a different kind of charm that instantly hit Chi Hao's heart. Chi Hao was stunned. Seeing his silly expression, the girl giggled and asked, Brother Haozi, what's wrong? Chi Hao finally came to his senses and hurriedly said, No, nothing. You are? The girl introduced herself. I'm called Azure C in the group. Azure C. Chi Hao really did know that this was a rather active ID in Lu Chen's fan club. It was just that she liked Lu Chen's TV series, Autumn in My Heart, and Full House of Romance, while Chi Hao liked Lu Chen's music works. He wasn't very interested in the two romantic dramas, so they basically didn't have much interaction. There was no need to mention how much Chi Hao regretted it. If he had known that Azure C was such a lovely girl, he would have. I wonder if it's too late now? You came alone? Chi Hao asked tentatively. Or with a friend? As soon as he finished speaking, a head popped out from behind Azure C and giggled. Have you taken a fancy to our sister Azure? If you want to pursue her, Brother Haozi, you have to work harder and show your sincerity. Azure C's face suddenly turned red, and she angrily slapped her friend who came with her. Chi Hao was so happy that he was about to explode. In that case, Azure C didn't have a boyfriend and was still single? That was simply great. He had a strong feeling that the girl sitting next to him was the one he had been searching for all this time. Fate was so wonderful. If it weren't for Lu Chen's fan, if it weren't for the movie A Chinese Ghost Story, if it weren't for him proposing the activity on a whim, if his love wouldn't have come. The movie began. The movie hall, which was full of seats, quickly quieted down. All the sounds of discussion and laughter quietly disappeared. All the people present were Lu Chen's fans. They had gathered here today to enjoy Lu Chen's first movie, and also to support their idol. This kind of support actually exceeded their expectations for the movie itself. However, everyone was not disappointed. 90 minutes was not long, but it was not short either. But for the 700 people present, it was too short. When the movie ended, the lights in the hall lit up. No one knew who started it, but then there was a round of warm applause. It's really good. No wonder he can get over 100 million yuan in Hong Kong. My Chen is awesome. I don't feel like I've seen enough. The ending is a little sad. Lu Chen's scholar is a little silly, and the feeling is very different. Chen Feier's grandma Dryad is simply amazing. That Yan Qixia is very good. I quite like Nia Xiaoqian. She seems to be a newcomer, right? She's very beautiful. No matter how beautiful she is, she's not as domineering as Mai Fei. Although it was already time to leave, many people still sat reluctantly, excitedly talking about the plot and the characters in the movie. All of them wanted to say more. This kind of situation could not be seen in a venue for ordinary audiences. It was only at these kinds of fan gatherings that people would chat enthusiastically with unfamiliar people because they had a common favorite idol. Qi Hao summoned the courage that he had accumulated after watching a movie and said to Azure C, who had just gotten up and was about to leave, Can I treat you to something? Ice cream? Azure C said. She wanted to refuse. After all, they had only met for the first time. Although Qi Hao's character was very good on the internet, girls had their own reservations. How could she easily agree to his invitation? How could she not see that Qi Hao had a good impression of her? However, she had a good friend who heard it and immediately shouted, Ice cream? Everyone pay attention. Brother Haozi said he would treat everyone to ice cream. Her best friend was simply pushing Qi Hao into a fire pit. There were hundreds of people present. Even if each person bought an ice cream cone that cost 3 yuan, it would still cost more than 2,000 yuan. When the people who did not know the truth heard this, they immediately started to make a ruckus. Brother Haozi is treating. Qi Hao felt like vomiting blood. However, looking at the girl in front of him, how could he say no? It's just a week's salary. I'll go all out. It's my treat. 1 ice cream cone per person. Although it was just an ice cream cone, it still turned the movie hall into a sea of laughter. Qi Hao no longer felt that he was at a disadvantage. That night, he watched an extremely wonderful movie and met a girl who moved his heart. Chapter 589. This movie is very good. Yes, the special effects are a little ordinary, but the storyline is very good. The soundtrack is even better. I like the theme song and interlude. It's worthy of being produced by Lu Chen. Logically speaking, the special effects are also not bad. The scene where Yan Qixia fights Granny Treyant is very exciting. Mai Chen is mighty. I want to watch it again. Just after 8:30 p.m., a large number of audiences poured out of the light shadow cinema. They came to the lobby in 2s and 3s, chatting and laughing, making the originally spacious lobby quickly crowded. Some of the audiences who had just finished watching the movie took the elevator or directly took the stairs to leave, but most of them were not in a hurry to leave. Instead, they called their friends and chatted in the lobby. Today was Sunday, the last day of the weekend. It was also the prime time for watching movies, so the business of the newly opened light shadow cinema was very good. There were many audiences who came to watch the movie. Some were waiting in the lobby and some were buying tickets. Suddenly, so many people came out and everyone was talking about the same movie. From the reviews, it seemed that the movie was very good. Such a scene was definitely rare. Therefore, someone asked curiously, Hey buddy, what movie are you watching? The person who was asked smiled and said, It's a Chinese ghost story that has just been released. I strongly recommend it. I'll give it a 5-star rating. It's really good. The person who asked suddenly hesitated. He could not help but turn his head and ask his girlfriend beside him, Why don't we watch this too? At present, the most popular movie in the cinema was, of course, Battle of Vulcan. However, he had already seen this Hollywood blockbuster, and his girlfriend did not like this kind of sci-fi theme. She had originally planned to watch Our Youth Is Not Lonely. Our Youth Is Not Lonely was a domestic youth inspirational film. It had just hit the major cinemas in the country yesterday, and the box office on its first day had exceeded 10 million. Its reputation on the internet was not bad. His girlfriend thought for a moment and said, Then let's watch this. The person who asked nodded and turned to the ticket office to buy tickets. However, it was a pity that the tickets for the next few shows of A Chinese Ghost Story were all sold out. This was because there were a lot of online reservations today, and there were not many showtimes in the cinema. Damn! The man cursed gloomily and could only buy tickets for Our Youth Is Not Lonely. Because it was a public place, his cursing was not loud, but even so, Li Lu still heard him in the crowd. The corners of his lips twitched, revealing a meaningful smile. Li Lu was the general manager of Guangying Cinema's marketing department. He was thin and unassuming, but he had been in the cinema industry for decades and had a wealth of experience. As the head of the marketing department, he paid a lot of attention to the domestic film market. Before any new film was officially released, he would try his best to understand the relevant information of the film. In the end, he would provide valuable reference for the cinema and even the cinema chain. Guangying Cinemas was a newly established cinema chain. Compared to the top 3 cinema chains in the country, it was still very weak. Because of this, Light Shadow had to have the best service and the sharpest sense of smell in order to establish a territory that belonged to them in this extremely competitive market. Li Li's responsibilities were heavy, and his sense of responsibility was also very strong. Whenever a new film was screened at Guangying, even if it was a film that didn't seem to have much box office potential, he would still pay attention to it on the spot. Simply put, it was to pay attention to the audience's reaction. Today was the first day that Lu Chen's first film, A Chinese Ghost Story, was released in China. As Guangying Cinemas had booked 3 cinemas in advance, Li Lu paid special attention to it. Regarding Lu Chen, Li Lu has a certain understanding. He still admires the young star who has risen rapidly like a comet in the entertainment industry, and has both strength and idolatry. Of course, admiration was admiration. Li Lu would not say that he would increase the number of screenings of A Chinese Ghost Story in Guangying Cinemas. He conducted a serious investigation on the screening of A Chinese Ghost Story in Xiangjiang. The results of the investigation were beyond Li Li's expectations. His friends in the same industry in Xiangjiang told him that the box office of A Chinese Ghost Story of more than 100 million was completely credible. There was basically no case of buying or fabricating the box office. In addition, the peripheral sales of A Chinese Ghost Story were also not fake. The 40 million plus sales miracle shocked the Xiangjiang industry. It was not that there were no doubts, but that there was no problem at all. Unless the big and small cinemas in Xiangjiang teamed up to fake it, that was even more impossible. At that time, Li Lu was silent for a long time. After smoking an entire pack of cigarettes, he submitted an investigation report and proposal to the higher-ups of the cinema chain. He suggested to increase the screening rate of A Chinese Ghost Story and to stock up on its peripheral products in advance to deal with the possible hot market. In this document, Li Lu could be said to have staked his reputation. If the cinema chain listened to his suggestion and the results were very different from his prediction, then his future in Guangying would be worrying. Li Lu actually did not need to do this at all. Anyone who had been in the industry for decades should know how to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. They would not put themselves in a passive and disadvantageous situation. However, Li Lu was gambling. He was betting that the box office of A Chinese Ghost Story would explode. Once he was right, his position in the eyes of the higher-ups of the cinema chain would increase greatly. Li Lu was not a gambler. He was using his keen sense of the market to decisively seize the opportunity. Although the cinema chain did not completely accept his suggestion in the end, the screening rate of A Chinese Ghost Story still exceeded 25% in Guangying, second only to the final Battle of Vulcan. At least 1/3 of the display cabinets in the surrounding shops were displaying the peripheral products of A Chinese Ghost Story. Today was the first day of the screening of A Chinese Ghost Story. The surging tide of moviegoers made Li Lu smell a hint of success. The discussions and evaluations of the film from all directions were all increasing his confidence bit by bit. Of course, he knew that many of these audiences were Lu Chen's fans. It was already common for fans to come to the cinema to support the stars. It was far easier for them to get good reviews than ordinary audiences. However, the object of these fans' discussion was not limited to the role played by Lu Chen. There were positive comments about the entire movie's storyline, characteristics, and even special effects. That was not simple. It was a pity that the screening for A Chinese Ghost Story was still a little less. Otherwise, today's box office results would be even better. Li Lu thought to himself as he looked at the surrounding shops not far away. He wondered how much the peripheral products of a Chinese ghost story could sell. Chapter 590. In the cinema, Li Lu was observing and thinking. In Beijing, 1,000 kilometers away, in the office of Chunfei Media's headquarters in the New Era Art Center, Lu Chan was also waiting. He was waiting for the box office results of a Chinese ghost story on the first day. To be honest, although he had full confidence in his film, when a Chinese ghost story was really released, Lu Chan still felt a long-lost anxiety and a little uneasiness. In the face of a strong opponent, he had done his best in terms of film publicity. The quality of the film itself was not a problem to pass the test of the Hong Kong market, but this did not mean that a Chinese ghost story would definitely be able to achieve a high box office. There was a lot of uncertainty in the market. Audiences in different places had different tastes, and there were many factors that affected them to spend dozens of yuan to watch a movie in the cinema. Some films were advertised with great vigor, and the box office was predicted to be very high. The investment cast and special effects were all in place, but the audience did not approve of it after it was released. In the end, it ended up being a failure. There were also some films that were not optimistic about in advance. The publicity was not good enough, but they relied on word of mouth to win countless audiences. As a light and shadow magic film, if one wanted to take out the money from the pockets of the audience, strength and luck were indispensable. The cost of a Chinese ghost story had long been recovered, and it had made a good profit through the sales of peripheral products. However, for any filmmaker, the domestic market was the ultimate test of the work. The box office of the movies in Hong Kong was limited, but the potential of the mainland was endless. Lu Chan did not care how much money a Chinese ghost story could bring him in the end, but he also hoped that his first movie could be a success in China. That was why he was nervous. Tata. There was a gentle knock on the door of the room. Lu Chan, who was sitting in front of the computer and browsing the web, did not look up. Please come in. The door was pushed open, and a pretty lady walked in with a steaming hot cup of coffee. It was not until the coffee cup was placed on the table that Lu Chan woke up. Fei, why aren't you resting yet? It was not his assistant who brought him the coffee, but Chan Fei. Chan Fei smiled gently and said, I'll accompany you to wait for the results. Lu Chan couldn't help but feel a trace of sweetness in his heart. He didn't pick up the cup to drink the coffee. Instead, he reached out and hugged Chan Fei, letting her sit on his lap. Chan Fei did not resist and naturally leaned into his embrace. Lu Chan rested his chin on her shoulder and breathed in his girlfriend's familiar body fragrance. The nervousness in his heart disappeared without a trace, and his whole body relaxed. Are you nervous? Chan Fei asked curiously. When she came in just now, she noticed Lu Chen's expression and could tell what he was feeling. Lu Chan smiled self-deprecatingly and frankly said, Yeah, I don't know why, but I'm suddenly afraid of failure. Chan Fei couldn't help but reach out and caress his face. It's okay if we fail. We can afford to lose. Her impression of Lu Chan was optimistic, strong, and calm. It was rare for him to show weakness and fear like this. But it was precisely this Lu Chan that made her feel incomparably real and flesh and blood. Lu Chan smiled and said, I know. Maybe I care too much. After all, this is the first operation of our company. I don't want to let everyone down. But now I'm not worried. I believe in myself. Chan Fei felt that the confident and invincible Lu Chan had returned. She didn't say much, but took the initiative to give a kiss, using her actions to express her support for Lu Chan. Good times always pass quickly. The coffee on the table turned from hot to cold, and it was already past midnight. At 1:27 p.m., the first day box office results of a Chinese ghost story were released. Thanks to the great development of the internet and the IT industry, things that were originally impossible in the past had become very common now. The data of all cinemas across the country was summarized to the cinema chain, and then transmitted to Chunfei Media. It only took less than 2 hours to complete. 38.75 million. The first day box office of a Chinese ghost story was nearly 40 million. There was immediately a burst of cheers in the office area outside. The employees who stayed up late with Lu Chan saw the box office results immediately and were all excited. Although this box office was much worse than the 120 million yuan Battle of Vulcan on the first day, one had to know that the average screening of a Chinese ghost story was less than 20%. As a Sino-Hong Kong co-production with a low investment, it was already very dazzling. With such an outstanding first-day box office, as long as there was no significant drop in the next few days, the screening of a Chinese ghost story would definitely increase. After all, its main opponent had already been in theaters for 2 weeks. Unlike the cheering employees, Lu Chun only felt a little happy about the box office results and was not too excited. This was because he knew very well that behind the box office of nearly 40 million yuan were the countless fans of himself and Chen Feier. According to what he knew, the fan groups of the two of them in various major cities had organized booking activities. Many fans had booked movie tickets in advance. It was normal for the box office to be high. If it was low, there would be a big problem. So he continued to wait. He waited for the sales data of the peripheral products to come out. Peripheral products were different from movie tickets. Although they were all scanned and recorded by the computer, it involved different situations in each cinema. The time it took for the statistics to be summarized was not that fast. The sales results of the peripheral products were undoubtedly more important to Lu Chun now, because it could more truthfully reflect the reputation of a Chinese ghost story among the audience. Many fans were willing to spend 30 to 50 yuan to support their idol at the cinema. However, in the face of hundreds of peripheral products, it was not easy for them to pay for it except for a few real hardcore fans. Unless they really liked the movie, like the story and characters in the movie, they would not be willing to pay for it. Unlike the United States, the domestic market for movie peripherals was not too big, especially for domestic movies. They had almost given up on this market. That was why Wang Xiaoshu thought that a Chinese ghost story was faking its peripheral sales. Whether they could prove their innocence or not, the sales on the first day were undoubtedly crucial. Lu Shi came as well. She and Chen Feier accompanied Lu Chun to wait for the results. It was not until 2:57 a.m. that the peripheral sales data from the cinema chain was finally sent over. 98 million. There were once again warm cheers and loud applause in the office area of Chunfei Media. It was done. The boulder in Lu Chen's heart finally fell to the ground. He could not help but let out a long sigh of relief. This result was even better than he had expected. Chapter 591. 38. 75 million in box office and 98 million in peripheral sales meant that a Chinese ghost story had created more than 60 million in sales on the first day. For a movie that had a screening rate of just over 15%, it was already very dazzling. Most importantly, the 98 million in peripheral sales was too beautiful. It did not lose to some popular Hollywood IP blockbusters at all, and the profits were more than the proportion of the box office. In the following movie release cycle, the peripherals of a Chinese ghost story could become a golden hen that laid eggs. Many of the employees who stayed at Chunfei Media that night were in the industry and deeply understood the meaning of this. Therefore, their cheers were from the bottom of their hearts. In addition to the box office and peripheral sales on the first day, the audience's comments on a Chinese ghost story, on Waves blogs, film and television-related websites, and forums were also collected and summarized by the marketing staff of Chunfei Media. Guangying website rating 8.7 1,785 ratings. Guangying website was a very famous community website in China. It mainly recommended and reviewed movies, television shows, and books. The Guangying ratings largely reflected the audience's evaluation of movies and TV series. This part of the audience was mainly artistic and petty bourgeois netizens, so their ratings had nothing to do with the movie's box office and TV series ratings. It only represented a kind of comment direction. It was worth mentioning that the shareholder of Guangying website was Guangying Cinemas. As a commercial film, it was undoubtedly rare for a Chinese ghost story to be able to obtain an 8.7 rating on Guangying website, which was more artistic and niche. That was because the members of Guangying website were quite picky. On Tomato website, 5,693 fresh tomatoes, 385 rotten tomatoes. The freshness is 23%. Tomato website was a more popular movie website. Whether it was influence or scale, it was not something that Guangying website could compare with. The evaluation of the film on this website was not reflected by the score. Instead, the audience who liked it would send a fresh tomato virtual rating prop and those who did not like it would send a rotten tomato. The number of fresh tomatoes minus the rotten tomatoes divided by the original number was the freshness. On the other hand, if the number of rotten tomatoes exceeded the fresh tomatoes, then the rotten tomatoes would be calculated, the sign of a rotten film. For a movie that had just been released, as long as the quality was not too bad or too ugly, usually the freshness would be higher. However, there were only two situations where the freshness could exceed 90% on the first day. One was that the producers had cheated to increase the number of tomatoes, and the other was that the movie was indeed well received. Whether it was Wuxia Studio in the past or Qinfei Media now, although they attached great importance to online publicity and marketing, they never used cheating methods to falsify. This was Wuxia's pride. Therefore, without any cheating, A Chinese Ghost Story got 93% freshness, which was undoubtedly a very exciting thing. Especially for the marketing department of Qinfei Media, it was equivalent to millions of publicity. Wave's blog movie rating 4. 5 stars, 25,307 reviewers. A 5-star rating of 86. 75%. QQ movie rating 9. 1. There were many professional or unprofessional film rating websites in the country, but there were only 10 or so that had influence and reference value. When the data of these 10 or so websites were summed up, the overall rating of A+ for A Chinese Ghost Story, second only to the highest S grade. Any movie, even if it had an A rating on the first day, would already be considered a preliminary success in the market. An A+ rating meant a good reputation. This score, which was calculated by a special software, also represented a strong follow-up market potential. It could affect the number of cinemas in cinemas. Clap, clap, clap. When Lu Chan walked out of the office with Chan Feier and Lu Shi, the employees who had been working hard in front of the computer all stood up. They congratulated and paid tribute to the boss with neat and loud applause. Thank you, everyone. Lu Chan raised his hands with a smile, motioned everyone to be quiet, and then said, "Thank you for your hard work. I believe everyone must be very hungry now, right? I'll treat everyone to a midnight snack." Although it was already 3 o'clock in the morning in Beijing, it was not a problem to find a restaurant to eat at any time, especially in the business district and business district, where there were many businesses that were open all night. Tomorrow, no, it should be today's holiday. After eating and drinking, everyone should have a good sleep. All employees' bonuses this month will be doubled. When Lu Chan said the last sentence, the cheers in the office area almost broke the glass. This kind of atmosphere full of vigor and vitality basically didn't exist in those big companies and groups. It represented the power of prosperity and a strong cohesiveness. A Chinese Ghost Story's first day box office, 38. 75 million peripheral sales, 25. 98 million inch QQ. The rise of a new genre of domestic movies. A Chinese Ghost Story's box office yesterday was excellent, shocking word of mouth. EasyNet. A new record for domestic movie peripheral sales. A Chinese Ghost Story sells 25. 98 million. Movie Express. Unafraid of the pressure of Hollywood blockbusters, A Chinese Ghost Story delivers a good result on the first day, everyday entertainment. On April 3rd, the second day of the official release of A Chinese Ghost Story. In China, many websites, media and newspapers published review articles, and even appeared on the entertainment headlines of several major websites. In the current domestic film market, the box office of 38.75 million on the first day of A Chinese Ghost Story was actually not high. In recent years, there were many films with a box office of more than 100 million on the first day. A box office of 30 to 40 million did not have much reporting value at all, unless the film's public relations investment was in place, then they could brag about it with their eyes open. However, the situation of A Chinese Ghost Story was different from other films. First of all, this film was quite a hot topic on the internet. A few days ago, the famous film critic Wang Xiaoxiu and Lu Chen's fans had a war of words on Wave's blog. At one point, it was even on the homepage of the hot search list. Secondly, the investment of this film was only 30 million yuan, and its opponent was the Hollywood special effects blockbuster Vulcan, which was currently in the limelight. There was also the failure of the similar film, The Painted Skin. With less than 20% of the screening, it was able to obtain a box office of nearly 40 million on the first day. It was really worth it. However, The box office of A Chinese Ghost Story was not the focus of the media's interest, but its peripheral sales. 98 million. This data was too dazzling, making people unable to look at it directly. They even had doubts. Many people, including many media reporters, wanted to ask, was this real? It was too explosive. Because Vulcan, which crushed A Chinese Ghost Story in the box office, completely lost to this new film produced by China and Hong Kong in peripheral sales. Chapter 592. Before A Chinese Ghost Story, peripherals were basically a minefield for domestically produced movies, including Hong Kong and Taiwanese movies. Movie peripherals were almost exclusive to Hollywood movies in the United States. The sales of peripherals in movies adapted from novels, comics, and games could even exceed the box office. The huge profits were really enviable. It was not that domestic filmmakers and film investors had not tried it before. They also wanted to eat some cake from it, but they were often beaten black and blue. In the end, they were all discouraged. The reason for this was rather complicated. The maturity of the market, the audience's acceptance, and even the peripherals themselves were all related. The popular IP of domestically produced movies also lacked the creativity and willingness to produce peripherals. They often relied on posters and the like to make up the numbers. In the past, domestically produced movie peripherals sold the best, claiming to have sold tens of millions of copies. However, the data was questionable and very exaggerated. A Chinese Ghost Story had sold 98 million yuan of peripherals on the first day. Although there was the fan effect of Liu Qian and Chan Feier, it was still very unbelievable in the eyes of the industry. Doubtful, the circle fell silent. However, the reaction of Liu Qian's fans was completely different. When the official Weibo of A Chinese Ghost Story released the first-day box office and peripheral sales results, countless fans ran to Wang Xiaoxu's blog to mock it. Didn't you say that the box office of A Chinese Ghost Story was not good? It was nearly 40 million on the first day. Didn't you say that the peripherals of A Chinese Ghost Story were fake? It was more than 25 million on the first day. Wang Xiaoxu, who had always refused to admit defeat, chose to remain silent for once. He did not retaliate tit for tat. That was because he was not sure if his previous judgment and prediction were accurate. The box office results of A Chinese Ghost Story on the first day could not be determined. The movie's early publicity and hype were good, and with the popularity of two popular celebrities, it was natural for the box office to be high. Some movies had a high box office on the first day, but after a few days they would reveal their true colors. As the number of people watching the movie increased, their reputation would rapidly decline, resulting in a dismal ending. Could A Chinese Ghost Story be one of them? Wang Xiaoxu was not completely confident. Even though his previous prediction was based on his understanding of the market, the sales of A Chinese Ghost Story were too dazzling. It was really unbelievable. As a well-known film critic in the industry, Wang Xiaoxu had his own information channels and sources, so he more or less knew the inside story. The first-day box office and peripheral sales of A Chinese Ghost Story might very well be completely real. This made Wang Xiaoxu feel as if his common sense had been subverted. He shut himself at home for an entire day, stationed in front of the computer, browsing the web and smoking 2 packs of cigarettes. In the end, Wang Xiaoxu decided to go to the cinema to watch A Chinese Ghost Story and understand the situation. Without investigation, he had no right to speak. He was prepared to seriously write a review of A Chinese Ghost Story. The movie tickets that Wang Xiaoxu had booked online were for the night of April 4th. He was also free the night before, but perhaps because it was too late, he didn't manage to book the tickets to the nearby cinemas. The tickets for the night show were all sold out. At 8 p.m. on April 4th, Wang Xiaoxu finished watching the movie that he had once questioned in Hall 3 of the Mother Earth Cinema in Beijing's 3rd Ring Road. It was exactly 9:30 when he finished watching the movie. Wang Xiaoxu was squeezed in the crowd and looked a little ugly. Then he went to the movie and souvenir shop on the right side of the hall. In a cinema where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold, the area of the surrounding shops was, of course, not large. The large space was reserved for the ticket office, drinks, and food. The sales of popcorn could account for 20 to 30% of a cinema's revenue. When Wang Xiaoxu arrived, there were already more than 10 to 20 customers in the shop. They were all young people and most of them were couples. The place was filled with large movie posters, and several display counters were filled with all kinds of movie peripherals. There were figurines, sets of accessories, props, costumes, daily necessities, and so on. It was a dazzling lineup under the spotlight. Wang Xiaoxu noticed that the goods on the display counter of the Mother Earth Cinema were almost divided into two parts. Half of them were peripherals of the showdown of Vulcan, such as spaceship models, cartoonish versions of the male and female protagonists, alien monsters, and so on. They were full of technology and were quite expensive. It was said that most of the peripherals of Hollywood movies were processed and manufactured in the United States, so these things were basically imported. It was normal for them to be expensive. The other half was filled with peripherals for a Chinese ghost story. There were figurines of different versions of the movie's characters, movie posters, soundtrack albums, and a commemorative set that included accessories. Wang Xiaoxu even saw a shining sword, the model of Qian Xia's magic sword. The sword hanging on the wall was a real thing made of metal. Although it did not have a sharpened edge, it was very well made. The details were as gentle as in the movie. 8 dark red seal scripts faintly appeared on the surface of the sword. Heaven and earth infinite borrow the power of heaven and earth. Wang Xiaoxu was very familiar with these 8 words. In the movie, Qi Xiaoyan was crazy and infatuated. When he cast spells, he chanted the incantation, which made people's blood boil. In Wang Xiaoxu's opinion, Qi Xiaoyan was the most distinctive and dazzling character in the movie, and it had been a long time since such an impressive character had appeared in a domestic movie. He casually picked up a Qi Xiaoyan doll that was placed on the glass cabinet. It was only the size of a palm, but it was made to look lifelike. Its form, spirit, and intent were all in place. It was not inferior to the dolls in Showdown with Vulcan at all. In fact, it even surpassed them in terms of characteristics. Wang Xiaoxu knew very well that such a thing could not be produced in a day or two. The design, mold, and production all took time. The film had undoubtedly started planning very early on, and its price was only half that of its competitors. How bold! Wang Xiaoxu secretly sighed in his heart. He put the Qi Xiaoyan doll back, but after hesitating for a moment, he picked it up again and walked toward the cashier. 58 yuan was really not expensive, and he really liked it. There were already 2 couples lining up in front of the cashier, and they bought more than Wang Xiaoxu. Wang Xiaoxu waited patiently. After paying, he did not stop. When he returned home, he put the doll he had just bought on the desk and smoked 3 cigarettes. Wang Xiaoxu was not a heavy smoker, but he had smoked very fiercely since yesterday. After he finished smoking, the smoke was still lingering in the study. Wang Xiaoxu seemed to have made an important decision in his heart. He suddenly straightened up and began typing quickly on the keyboard with both hands. On the computer screen, a line of black title text was quickly forming. A solemn apology to a Chinese ghost story. Chapter 593. Some people would try their best to deny, avoid, or simply pretend to be dead when they did something wrong or said the wrong thing. However, some people would apologize openly, even if it might affect their reputation. There were many big V's and small V's on Waves's blog. There were both types of people. The former undoubtedly outnumbered the latter. Some would even rather go to court and lose money than apologize because they were worried that they would lose fans. Wang Xiaoxu was undoubtedly the latter. He was very good at writing and never easily admitted defeat when arguing with others in his column and blog. However, if he was really wrong, he would not insist on it for the sake of face. At 10:05 p.m. on April 4th, the well-known writer and film critic solemnly apologized to a Chinese ghost story, and Lu Chan on his personal blog, which had 1.75 million fans. The reason for the apology was naturally because he had questioned the box office and peripheral sales of a Chinese ghost story in Hong Kong on Weekly Movie Talk. Turned out that he was wrong. That was because tonight Wang Xiaoxu personally went to the cinema to watch the movie and bought a peripheral product. Without investigation, he had no right to speak. He admitted that he had made a subjective mistake and had a habitual bias against domestic movies. However, he did not expect a Chinese ghost story to be so outstanding. In this blog post, Wang Xiaoxu praised a Chinese ghost story. He felt that the movie had reached a very high standard in terms of plot, characters, soundtrack, background props, and special effects. Especially in terms of soundtrack and character creation, it could be called a real masterpiece. The peripheral products of A Chinese Ghost Story were not only abundant in quantity, but also of excellent quality. The price was not very expensive. It was both unexpected and reasonable for it to be able to achieve such high sales. Whether it was the movie itself or the peripheral products, the producers had done it with the word heart. In the past decade or so, the domestic film market had continued to be popular. Coupled with the advent of the internet era, film reviews were no longer limited to a few professionals. Online blogs, Tieba forums, and netizens who discussed the film were everywhere. However, in this circle that was neither big nor small, Wang Xiaoxu was undoubtedly an influential film critic. Not only did his film review articles appear on his personal blog, but they were also often published in newspapers and magazines. Therefore, when his movie review, written in the form of an apology, was published on his blog, it immediately caused quite a stir in the industry. Many people in the industry forwarded or commented on it. When the fans who had been mocking Wang Xiaoxu saw this, they immediately changed their stance. They liked Wang Xiaoxu's sincere apology and forwarded it in large numbers. The number of fans on Wang Xiaoxu's blog quickly exceeded 2 million. Many ordinary netizens who saw Wang Xiaoxu's blog post couldn't help but be curious about A Chinese Ghost Story. Everyone wanted to see if this highly praised film was genuine, so they all ordered tickets online. Although some people suspect that Wang Xiaoxu has been paid to join hands with Wuxia to hype up, such a voice is too weak to set off any storm. The reason was very simple. It was because the opponent that A Chinese Ghost Story was facing was an imported Hollywood blockbuster, and not a domestic film with a huge investment. Otherwise, the voices of doubt would be at least 10 times louder. Public opinion on the internet could affect reality, especially the reputation of a movie. A Chinese Ghost Story had a box office of 38.75 million on the first day of April 2nd, and it broke through 40 million the next day. On the 4th it reached 43 million, breaking through 100 million in 3 days. What was even more shocking was that on April 5th, the box office of A Chinese Ghost Story soared to 65 million plus, and the screening rate had exceeded 30%, strongly beating Showdown with Vulcan. Showdown with Vulcan had been released for 2 weeks, so it was inevitable that the box office would decline. However, the problem was that ever since A Chinese Ghost Story was released, its box office had declined very much. Especially on the 5th, it had fallen to 37 million, losing to the 28 million box office of A Chinese Ghost Story. In the words of a certain person in the industry, it was a shock to the eyes of the entire world. Showdown with Vulcan was aiming for more than 1 billion yuan. Its real opponent was originally Lion Pictures' fantasy blockbuster, Legend of the Holy Land, which would be released on April 9th. It was also a Hollywood blockbuster with a huge investment. Unexpectedly, it lost to A Chinese Ghost Story before Legend of the Holy Land arrived. In terms of publicity, scale of investment, and special effects, Showdown with Vulcan could easily crush A Chinese Ghost Story. Such a result was really shocking. On April 6, 7, and 8, the box office of A Chinese Ghost Story continued to rise with the increase in the screening rate, pulling out an extremely dazzling line. On the 8th, the day before Legend of the Holy Land was released, the box office broke 100 million yuan in a single day. For a domestically produced movie, this was undoubtedly a miraculous existence. Although it was not unique, it was definitely the only one in recent years. From April 2nd to 8th, A Chinese Ghost Story was released for a week, and its box office reached 420 million yuan in the first week. The industry fell silent. Many people knew that the investment for A Chinese Ghost Story was only 30 million yuan. The domestic publicity and marketing were basically not much different from this amount. Even if the subsequent publicity investment was included, it would not exceed 100 million yuan at most. The 420 million yuan box office had already steadily earned back all the costs and achieved a considerable profit. Not only that, the peripheral sales of A Chinese Ghost Story had also reached more than 80 million yuan, creating an unprecedented record for domestically produced movies, including Hong Kong and Taiwanese movies. Furthermore, this sales result had Big Battle of Vulcan, a Hollywood blockbuster with an investment of more than 100 million US dollars, actually lost to a domestically produced movie in peripheral sales. This was something unimaginable in the past, but it had really happened now. This could not help but remind people of Lu Chen's bold words on his blog, saying that a Chinese ghost story would take in 500 million yuan at the box office and over 100 million yuan in peripheral sales. At that time, other than Lu Chen's hardcore fans, not many people believed him. Many people in the industry even secretly mocked his arrogance, thinking that he had lost his mind. What about now? It was not a problem for a Chinese ghost story to exceed 500 million yuan at the box office. It was not a dream to hit 1 billion yuan, but it had such real potential. Those who had mocked Lu Chen back then had their faces slapped swollen. The real surprise was yet to come. On April 9th, due to the release of Legend of the Holy Land, a Chinese ghost story finally dropped, as if relieved of a heavy burden. The box office on that day was 87 million yuan. However, with almost the same screening rate, the box office of Legend of the Holy Land only exceeded 80 million yuan. It actually lost to a Chinese ghost story, which had been released for 8 days on its first day. Chapter 594. The film industry was a highly profitable industry. Take the current domestic film market for example. With so many film companies in it, the 3 major cinema chains and small and medium-sized cinema chains were desperately building cinemas all over the country. Of course, they wanted to take a bite out of this extremely tempting cake. In the past decade, there was no lack of films with only an investment of 20 to 30 million yuan that became a huge success. In the end, they earned hundreds of millions or even more than a billion yuan at the box office. The profits were so high that it was enough to shame the traditional industry. However, if one carefully analyzed these low-budget high-box office films, they would discover the secret behind them. They were either young idols or comedies. There were basically no exceptions. Other high-box office films came from high investment. Investment of 1 to 200 million yuan was common. Domestic blockbusters were trying their best to approach Hollywood in terms of special effects, which also led to the continuous increase in production costs. As a domestically produced film, a Chinese ghost story had not surpassed everyone at the box office. There were many domestically produced films that had grossed more than 500 million yuan in the first week. There were 7 or 9 examples that could be casually mentioned. However, a Chinese ghost story was a fantasy ghost film with a small investment. The 420 million yuan in the first week made it an extremely special example. It also seemed to have opened a door for its peers in the industry. It turned out that this type of movie could be made like this. A Chinese ghost story did not involve much computer special effects, and the production was rather sophisticated. Many scenes used props and traditional filming methods, but after editing and synthesis, the effect was very outstanding, especially the battle scenes, which could be said to be ingenious. It was much better than those colorful and flashy special effects. And the reason for its success was not just that. The characters with distinct personalities, the poignant and moving love story, the main character's looks, and the impeccable ancient soundtrack formed a classic. That's right, it was a classic. After watching a Chinese ghost story, many people in the industry felt that this film was enough to lead the new trend of domestically produced fantasy/ghost films. It was fully qualified to become a classic. On the internet, a Chinese ghost story had a high reputation, and its overall rating had been maintained at A grade. Many film critics strongly recommended it on their own blogs, and the entertainment media reported on it. All these factors combined to create the high box office of a Chinese ghost story, which had also suppressed its new and biggest competitor, Legend of the Holy Land. Compared to a Chinese ghost story, Legend of the Holy Land, which had just been released, had a much worse reputation. This Hollywood blockbuster's box office in North America was lackluster. It had originally wanted to recoup its capital in China, but the audience did not really like it. On April 10th, the box office of a Chinese ghost story dropped slightly to 81 million yuan, taking another big step towards the 1 billion mark. On the other hand, Legend of the Holy Land dropped to 47 million yuan. Although the box office had exceeded 100 million yuan in 2 days, such a high drop clearly indicated a bleak future. Interestingly, another domestically produced film, Our Youth Is Not Lonely, which was released at the same time as a Chinese ghost story, rose by 1 or 2 million yuan against the market, highlighting the weakness of Legend of the Holy Land. Nowadays, domestic movie audiences had already experienced the baptism of Hollywood blockbusters. It was obvious that pure special effects and visual stimulation could no longer satisfy everyone's needs. Therefore, Legend of the Holy Land, which focused on special effects and lacked in plot, was easily abandoned. From a certain point of view, the days when any Hollywood blockbuster could sweep the domestic market were long gone. However, many industry insiders believed that if there was no A Chinese Ghost Story, or if A Chinese Ghost Story was replaced by The Painted Skin, which had already been taken off the market, the box office of Legend of the Holy Land would not have fluctuated so much. On the evening of April 12th, Chunfei Media held a celebration party for the box office of A Chinese Ghost Story to exceed 500 million yuan at the Makati Cultural and Arts Center in Beijing. The threshold for movies was getting higher and higher. In the past, a box office of more than 100 million yuan was worth celebrating. Now, holding a celebration party with less than 500 million yuan would be laughed at. However, for A Chinese Ghost Story, a box office of 200 to 300 million yuan was enough. The box office earnings of the movie so far had already made the industry raise their eyebrows. Therefore, on the day of the celebration, all the media invited by Chunfei Media were present. There were also many uninvited reporters gathered outside the Arts Center, wanting to try their luck. The celebration party for A Chinese Ghost Story was held in a grand manner. It had been organized a few days ago and all the original cast of Hong Kong had been invited, including Nie Mingzhu, who played the female lead, and Ma Rongjin, who played the role of Yan Qixia. The two of them also received a lot of attention from the media, especially Nie Mingzhu, who had already become popular in the mainland because of A Chinese Ghost Story. She became the focus of the scene and there were countless flashes on her. As usual, other than the media reporters and guests in the industry, there were also many lucky fans. They had all obtained the qualifications through a lucky draw on the blog. These fans and guests got a beautiful gift as soon as they entered the venue. All of them were satisfied. They also made the atmosphere of the scene extremely lively and explosive, especially when Lu Chan, Chunfei, Nie Mingzhu and Ma Rongjin teamed up to open a huge bottle of champagne. The whole audience burst into thunderous cheers. After that, Lu Chun accepted interviews from many media outlets. There were nearly 20 microphones with logos in front of him, and even more reporters surrounded him. A reporter could not wait to ask, "Lu Chun, will you film the second installment of A Chinese Ghost Story?" Lu Chun shook his head without hesitation. "No, but I've already sold the copyright of A Chinese Ghost Story to my partners, so it's possible to make a second or even a third installment, but I won't participate in it again." If he wanted to make a movie, there were too many scripts to choose from. There was no need to rely on a sequel to rely on the original. This surprised the reporters a little. After all, it was completely reasonable for a movie to have a sequel. Lu Chun was actually willing to give up this huge profit. But then again, without him as the male lead, the sequel would lose a lot of its luster. "Then what do you want to shoot for your second movie?" Lu Chun smiled and said, "This is a secret for the time being. At present, I'm preparing to shoot my third TV series, You from the Star. It's expected to start filming at the end of this month." This was considered a piece of news that was neither big nor small. There would definitely be many TV fans of Lu Chun who would be interested in it. However, the reporters were not satisfied. Someone asked, "Excuse me, why did this movie choose a newcomer as the female lead and Chunfei as the villain?" The reporter's eyes lit up, obviously hoping to dig out some big information from Lu Chun's mouth.